and he was on what they called, the death glide.
The pathway.
They basically. I want to give water. Yes. I mean, they stopped feeding him and give him morphine. I go, well, fuck. Of course he's going to die. Probably language. Of course he's going to die if you don't feed the guy.
And then they phoned me up. They said there's no CPR. There's no.
So the third day I came in, I said, "What's going on here?" He wants some food, and he's like parched mouth, and he wasn't really that coherent anymore. I don't know whether it was the morphine or in fact maybe he was going into some kind of coma from not eating. But I took a beer in there. I put a straw in the beer, and the guy drank half a beer. Like it was like he was like he drank the whole. I said, "He's thirsty. Let's get him some water." So we were going there every day. Now look, I'm not an expert doctor, and I can't say what maybe palliative care is a certain procedure, and they know better than I do. But I really,
non-consensual DNR.
I kind of got the feeling that they said right now he's on his death path. Let him die.
Yes,
and maybe that's the right thing to do. I don't know. I mean, I certainly don't want to go that way.
But it's a one-size-fits-all solution, and it's not based on consent, and it's not based on human rights, because the notion of human rights is totally the antithesis of this Sovietized system. And Philip's family fled a Soviet system from Moscow in what 1990.
My dad wrote some notes. My dad wrote some notes just before. He was totally conscious. He was fine. I was talking to him on the phone. When he could get signal. The guy next to him had died. He was covered in a pile of blood and vomit and feces in the bed right next to him. Right. And he was describing graphically what he could see, and this guy was being ignored for hours and hours. Now, they wouldn't let my father even go to the toilet. They chained him up so he couldn't actually go to the toilet. They put the plug in his arm. So he had to go and put in they were cleaning up, the nurses I was talking to, they were cleaning him up, taking the shit out when they had time. Imagine you're seeing your own
unbelievable.
This is in the first
in your death,
in your deathbed. And then after that, he wrote a letter.
Deathbed, age 71.
The last thing he wrote, he wasn't writing a will, he wasn't writing goodbye, Philip, or goodbye.
So help. I'm here.
I'm in hell. Yeah.
He just wrote, Vladimir Putin, you are a shit. You have to stand down. And he addressed it to the Kremlin. And so what am I supposed to do? I'm going to send that letter to the Kremlin?
Probably not a good idea.
This is the last thing he wrote. So after writing about dying in his own feces next to a guy who's already dead, I'm shocked,
Well, no need to send it because I think Putin's watching.
Yeah, well, Putin, where to go.
So Dmitry,
this is a guy who escaped,
fled, and then
Union.
returned.
When did that happen? Was it December?
No, it happened last
April.
Okay. But we left a country that had been fallen apart. We had the tanks approaching the White House in Moscow. We had Boris Yeltsin being the new commander, drunk as a skunk. Happy New Year, guys. And then
do you want Gazprom? Which industry do you want? Just pass me the vodka, and I will give you steel. You want steel?
Yeah.
That was Yeltsin.
Banditism in the streets. You're actually afraid to walk out of your house because people are getting raped, murdered outside, and people are waiting in your doorway. You didn't know who they were. They may be armed. There was just people getting killed in the 90s.
This is when you were 6.
Yeah, we left that country. We got to England, and we came here because my parents were on a list of composers and cultural people, intelligentsia that were banned because they were not interested in communist propaganda. They were interested in Western ideas and in progress of Austrian music, ideas from the West, literature that had been listed as banned. This is a group of people that left a falling apart empire, and they came to this bright new future where their children could go to school and
become artists and composers and
say what they like, And then they're chained up in this terrible catastrophe that's affected the entire globe. So suddenly this bipolar world of like the East and the West has become a monopolar or around a pinball where everything's exactly the same. We're all under this.
Yes, all countries have the same phenomena, the same middle managers in government of the elite in the WHO and so on, who coordinate where the money comes out from the IMF and the way they make it rain with fiat money.
So where are you going to go? Where are you going to go?
It's a repeat of history, right? If you look at the Greek Empire, then the Roman Empire, the Spanish Empire, the British Empire. I mean, history keeps repeating itself, but it's getting faster. But I attended a lecture with one of Putin's. He was in his party at one point, but now he's been excommunicated from Russia because he said some things that are not favorable.
He said he was a shit.
But he gave. But what Putin first did is he said, "Listen, we need to get this economy going." And this guy was an economist. He had a team, and it was a very interesting lecture because I'm put it in a real nutshell. They looked at every country since 1850 in Western civilization, and they drew a matrix. And they said, we discovered that with zero exception, which is statistically impossible, Whenever you increase government, you decrease the economy. So first, there was an inverse relationship between the size of government, delta, the change, and the economy. Conversely, if you shrunk the government, the economy grew. Without exception, now there was a lot of difference of opinion as to the causes. Okay, I looked at every economy, okay, in every Western country. And his response was, look at, who cares what the reason is? We know cause and effect, just shrink the government. Okay? Because you can say it's because of this, because of that, doesn't matter. Just shrink your government and your economy will blossom and bloom. And that's a proven fact. And I could, if you Google it and find out the guy's name, but it was a very, very interesting lecture. He published a paper on it. And this was like 15 years ago. Well, I mean, I saw the lecture like 2 years ago, but he says, oh, this is like, it's fact. The government is inefficient. The government, efficiency.
Well, what did Reagan say? Reagan said that the most terrifying thing is a man coming up to you and saying, I'm from the government and I'm here to help.
Well, Charles I said there's no freedom without government on the last moment before they chopped his head off.
Yeah.
So that was a joke. But he said, there's no way. I'm the problem. I'm the king that is stopping the freedom from happening. So chop my head off and you'll have freedom. Actually, he was a king who was, spending a lot of money on art, improving the country in different cultural ways, but people weren't happy. This is the first revolution. Before the French Revolution, there's a king who was like completely changing things to try and dissolve the government. And so he got rid of the government, and then what happened? They came back and they got him.
Well, I mean, whenever all of these, I mean, even when the Romanovs were first all killed and the communists took over, I mean, they suddenly became their own villains. I mean, they basically became what they were arguing about. So getting back to power corrupts, right? But if you want to get back to if you want to talk about efficiency, so I mean, profit in society, profit in our own lives always comes from efficiencies. Okay, it's called the paradox of comparative advantage, right? You should always be doing what you do best, right? And the best, I mean, if you do what you do best, and if you realign resources so that the people that do things best only do those things, you actually create profit. That's why it's called a paradox, because it's out of thin air. And the simple example it might be, Lorenzo we'll take John and Lorenzo living side by side. Okay, identical houses, identical yards, and John can mow the yard in a half an hour, but it takes him an hour to rake. Poor Lorenzo takes him an hour to mow, but half an hour to rake. He's a fast raker, right? So after a couple of days, Lorenzo goes, "Hey, John, how about I do all the raking, you do all the mowing," right? So in the past, it was 3 man-hours of work, right?
Yes.
But we've realigned themselves now. So now John comes out, he mows both lawns in 1 hour. You rake both in an hour. You've now done the same job in 2 hours. Yes? What have you created?
Yes.
You've created 1 hour of profit out of thin air. Okay? And that's what efficiencies are all about. And that's why governments deplete, they kill. They're like a cancer to profit and wealth.
Because they don't want you to collaborate.
Well, they're not efficient. The government sometimes are the last resort for people that become workers. There's never any there's never a penalty for poor performance. There's never a loss of salary.
The incentives, as we would say.
There's no incentives. That's all. They're sloppy.
Yes.
They're non-caring. And you look at, they're unhappy a lot. I remember Arnold Schwarzenegger, he said something. He said, if you look around the world, who are look at unsuccessful people, unhappy people in the world, okay? What's their biggest fear? Their biggest fear is that one day they can't retire because they hate their job every day, right? Look at successful people, okay? What's their biggest fear? Is that one day they have to retire, right? That's the whole difference. And you get a lot of government workers that are doing the slog, that are in their union paid jobs, and all they care about is money. As soon as they get to work, they just think about when's my lunch break, when's my break, where's my holiday, right?
Yes.
They're taking no pride in what they do. There's a good movie. It's called American Factory. It's about a Chinese entrepreneur who takes over an American factory in the Midwest after the Chrysler company went down, put in $1 billion, and out of his 25 factories worldwide that are making tons of money, he can't get this American factory making the money and he brings investigators. The guy puts in a lot of them, put $1 billion in. He brings in his secretary, brings in his investigators, he brings in his corporate heads. Finally, he starts bringing the Chinese managers in. He goes, "What's wrong with these guys?" He goes, "Well, first of all, they don't work. Second of all, we could tape their mouths, they would stop talking on their shift." It's hilarious. That's a documentary. You can never get this. And at first, he was a savior because they were all unemployed. And then after 2 years, he was the villain because they wanted more lunch breaks, more holidays, higher pay. And he goes, "Jesus Christ, I'm moving out of town." You watch the movie. I didn't do it justice there, okay? It's very, very interesting because it's a prolonged 2 hours, and it's about the frustration and the surprise of this Chinese billionaire seeing how inefficient the American worker is.
So the spoiled people, the spoiled, they haven't got the moral or the.
That could be it. I mean, if you watch it,
Yeah.
I think it's more than that, but they're basically, we are sympathetic to the minority. We are sympathetic to the lazy. We are sympathetic to the whiners. And in fact, 150 years ago, during the British Empire, it was exactly the opposite.
Yeah, they worked hard.
You guys never complained either. Stiff upper lip. Pip, pip, tally ho. How did 10,000 troops run India for 300 years? I don't want to go there.
So no, I understand. So the division of labor, the paradox of a comparative advantage.
Now, is it true that you can rake a yard quite quickly?
Yeah. I've got the technique.
Yeah,
it's on the wrist. It's in the wrist.
It's Karate Kid.
So you should always be doing what you do best.
Even if
So Philip should be painting.
Yeah.
Yes, as we were trying to work out earlier, in terms of we've got so much
it's a business matter. So if you have 100 guys, so
Yeah.
you have 100 team members. I don't like to use the word employee. We're all on a team. You're the captain of your team. You would do best by aligning your
all of
workers
these,
into what they do best. So let's think of a football team, okay? Are we, or even rugby? I mean, who's going to be the winger, right? I don't even know rugby that well, so I can maybe have to talk about hockey. But I'm not going to put I'm not going to make my goalie the forward, okay?
Yes.
And my wingmen should not be defense, because
Yes.
I want my fast skaters that can skate 80
Yes.
miles an hour backwards. I want them on defense, right?
Yes.
And if you start just putting people where they want to go and blah blah blah,
Yes.
first of all, you're missing your responsibility as the captain. Second of all, you're not going to win any games. And third of all, it's because you have inefficient allocation of talent.
So the sorting mechanism of incentives and resources in our society has somehow taken a wrong turn. It's degenerating.
Because you want a homogeneous society. Heaven forbid if I should ever say men should do what they do best and women should do what they do best. Can't say that.
Yes. No. In fact, we don't. We have now, instead of women, we have vagina havers. Instead of pregnant woman, we have pregnant person. And people.
Penis envy is taking on a whole new meaning.
Yes.
Let's just go back to the idea of freedom. Like, we're not allowed to travel unless we have conformed. We have to take tests. We're not allowed to take without a vaccine passport. If you're French, you're not allowed to go abroad. Where is this all going? We're going to all be staying at home. I mean, is that what they want? Or is that what we have to do? I mean, is it going to be enforced to be a vaccinated, injection receiving, test taking, quarantine slave forever? I mean, am I not allowed to work abroad anymore? Do I have to stay at home? Is that the plan?
Well, I think that's what I like.
Yeah.
Right?
So what are we going to do about it?
Well, it'll be a rebellion at some point, right?
So
unfortunately, you guys don't have the right to bear arms, so
yes,
you'll have to take a lesson off America.
So we're in a position where, if we look back at our Hegelian dialectic, religions had social control through the God matrix and through fear.
The parish didn't allow non-carvers to leave the bloody parish. They had to be at assembly every Sunday in their church.
Then you had to be. Then you had your ideologies, which enforced fear through the enforcement of death camps and so on. We see that the improvement of the human, and then how do we motivate? How do we get people to build something fresh? Well, we see this era of revolutions from the English Revolution in 1649,
not to mention the French
48 through the French, the Russian,
Revolution,
the American, so on. It always leads to a bloodbath, and one of the reasons for that is that you're fighting over the middle four squares in the chessboard. Like there's this territory that everyone wants to get the high ground, and so you have this endless bloodbath, whether it's Bolsheviks or Robespierre and all those characters and whoever it is. America did well because they weren't killing the king in their territory. They were just making it annoying enough that he went home. Like George III wasn't based.
Well, the royalists don't call it a revolution. They call it a civil war. So Americans never beat the British. It's just a little civil war problem there.
So it seems that we're at the position now, and we were talking about this with Afsana, who's coming, I think, shortly, maybe at 3. That we discussed the sort of sheet notion at the start, and now we're seeing a notion of like trust the plan. We've seen a lot of people who let's look at the recent anti-lockdown protests. A lot of the people who are at these protests and are saying sort of, oh, the mainstream media will fall. The globalists are on the way out. trust the plan, whether it's a QAnon plan, whether it's the Trump agents in the FBI and NSA,
angels fighting the demons,
are angels fighting the pedos in the globalist HQ, and that this is a battle that's going on behind the scenes that you don't need to participate in. You can just wait and pray and sit in as a member of the congregation and just wait for the titans to clash on your behalf. And that this is another kind of illusion.
Oh, the wrestling match.
Hogan. So this is another kind of, it's a cultural little icon of myth. It's like there's this battle going on behind the scenes, and things aren't what they seem, but they trust the plan. And I think that's another way of cordoning off energy. And we're seeing it more and more different ways of people are being peeled off from actually doing something for themselves.
Yeah, because the next lockdown means you can't actually pay rent on your business.
Oh yes, so
you can't rent a gallery.
Philip's colleagues are trying to rent a space for an art gallery, and they've been in a contract for 2 years, 10 years. They're not motivated to do it because they might not be able to open with more lockdown.
You can't have a permanent business address. You can only be a mobile person with a website that turns up with a capital.
Well, what's happening in Canada and the U.S. right now, and I see it personally. The U.S. Biden denies it, and I think it's probably happening here as well. Although I have no evidence of it. But they're giving people a lot of money to stay home right now with this. We call it CERB. So they're getting $500 or $800. It's like £800 a week. So you and your girlfriend could be getting you could be getting £1,600 a week just for staying home. So we've got ads running to hire people all the time, okay? And normally we have metrics that show us about 7 to 10 a week inquire for the jobs. They send a resume, they say, yes, I'm interested. In 3 weeks, and we've doubled the ads, we haven't had one inquiry. Nothing one. Yeah. I mean, no, 6 weeks. Nobody. I'm running retail ads now. I'm running Google ads. Nobody wants to work. It's unbelievable.
So the central bank can make it rain with inflated fiat currency and extreme money printing. And rely on the supply, rely on the supply chain from China, rely on the hyperinflation that's going to be offset by the plastic goods coming in from China.
Women were knitting at work and smoking. People were going to the factory in the Soviet Union. They didn't work on purpose. They knew they were getting the same wage anyway.
Yeah,
and then it got to the point where they had Chernobyl. They had a catastrophe. Yeah. And then they had to ask for help. And by the time they got that help, everybody was dead from radiation. Everybody was poor. That's why we had to leave this country, because suddenly all the resources were gone because the whole industry was closed down and it all moved somewhere else.
Yeah.
So
people are not doing anything. That's happening now in the West.
So we're seeing this kind of either matrix pod is closing over. Like, watch TV. Like, don't have a remote control. Use Alexa to say what you want to see. The food can be delivered by a pipeline from Deliveroo. Instead of
cocooning. Like the world is cocooning.
Yeah,
and the media is loving it.
And
because they're getting all the news, all their ideas is being fed to them. Based on what your likes or dislikes are. So you really are starting to be brainwashed. You gotta be careful of that. The second thing,
you're gonna be out of your house, off your sofa, without not watch TV.
A lot of news comes from Twitter. Okay. Now, by the way. Not as many people use Twitter as you think, and so a lot of them aren't they're influential, but they're not meaningful. And so you might have like a very, very small minority of people using Twitter, and they're like the minority but vocal crowd that then retweet. I'm not on Twitter, but they retweet.
Yeah.
That retweeting sometimes creates a trend, which is false, because it could be like maybe it's a handful of people. It's usually the same handful that are doing the trends, right?
Well, it's like Ipsos Mori polling.
Yeah. And
the public opinion says, and you find out they asked 1,000 people by telephone who have landlines, and they ask them in the evening. So it's old people in 5 to 7 p.m.
Yes.
And it's on a weekday in the evening. They pick up the landline and they say hello, and they ask a question, and that's public. And they say that justifies public opinion.
People are not equal, okay, and they think they are, and they never have been, and never will be. Cultures aren't equal, okay, and so this moral fantasy land that some of the left wing liberals want to run into are that everyone's going to be equal. Yeah. And here's but if you go back through history, there were different things that made you maybe superior or fearless. I mean, William the Conqueror, he wasn't a computer scientist, he wasn't a gunner, he was a hunter or a swordsman. So in the old days, as a caveman, if you were good with the club, you probably ran the clan, right? And then he became good with the bow and arrow. So a guy who was an archer, he was probably feared, right? Or a guy who then became a swordsman, right? In the old medieval towns, they were the kings. They were the guys that ran it, right? And then became the fighter, the U.S. fighter, the guy who was good with the guns, right?
Yeah.
Right. I mean, in today's society, it's the guy who's good with a computer, right? So the smart guy, the nerd,
the glasses,
right? Yeah. What are you going to call a nerd in grade 6? 20 years from now, we're going to call him boss. They like to have so all these so it's like these brainiac computer scientists. They're the ones.
Get all the pussy.
Well, I wouldn't say that, but
No.
but actually, that's kind of true. No, so what happens is they have well, it's very simple. You know, I mean, men like sex and women like money, right? So that's an age old, and I could probably get in trouble for that one. But so it's always been unequal. Okay, there are superior and there are inferior people. It's always been that way. It always will be that way. Now, if we're talking about music, sure, then you're going to have a different class of person who, matter of fact, one of the richest guys in the world, I think he is a conductor, composer, I think in Vienna. I just read an article on him.
Yeah? What's his
Yeah, because
name?
he was also a pharmaceutical guy, but
Oh my God.
but he had his money originally from music. Now Malthusian, I think it was Malthusian into economics. He always talked about the poor class. He said there will always be poverty. There will always be a scale. Okay, and so people think that you're going to get rid of it. It's impossible. You can't. Getting back to what I just said about equality.
Mm-hmm.
However, you look at poverty right now compared to 200 years ago.
Absolutely.
These guys are super rich. The poverty level right now
Is way higher.
which brings, and one final point. Why do you think you want to have welfare? What do you think the real reason is behind giving these guys money, welfare, keeping them a little bit of money?
Just to keep them from attacking the...
Exactly. So you give them enough so that they're get a meal,
fed,
buy beer and fed,
sleep, yeah.
and they never get enough of them together to rebel.
Yeah.
Yes.
You stop feeding all the poor. You stop feeding all the less fortunate, all the people who I call
It's
them
going to be death and destruction.
You're never more than 3 meals away from a revolution.
These-
who said that?
So,
I don't know.
so,
let them eat bread. Let them eat cake.
so the insight here is
Mary
really key
Antoinette.
from Oliver, that revolutions like your study of the government shrinking leads to expansion in the economy and vice versa, the investor relationship. Revolutions are all predicated on 40% of the median paycheck going on food. Every time, it's not starvation. It's not. Thank you so much. It's not starvation.
Thank you.
It's
Oh, no, give me that. Give me that.
It's not.
beer.
It's not.
Oh.
It's not starvation. There we go. There's more to share. There's more to share.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
just illustrating
My God.
So
bourgeois.
so it's not starvation absolute. You're right. It's relative. So it's 40% of the median paycheck goes on food. So when you get to
What does that mean?
kids-
Goes on food. What does that mean? Oh, food stamps or something? What does that mean? On food.
So when
Is that a British term?
when you're in your economy, the median
Oh,
income,
you're spending
40% of that
on food,
paycheck
on
on
food.
food.
Okay.
Then you get revolution, whether it's Weimar Germany, leading to Nazism,
Inflation.
whether it's the Bolsheviks taking over in Russia, whether it's Robespierre.
Food's
And
going
Danton.
up in price right now. a lot.
Yeah, exactly.
And
But
so, wood, right?
so
Wood's food.
the
where
elite,
you
the
gonna
power,
go?
the power
Where you gonna go?
structure.
Canada has
always-
a lot of food, a lot of wood. We're fine.
Have you forgotten
Right.
to farm? Like there's people over the world forgetting to farm.
No, we farm. I actually farm more now, but it's all cannabis. No,
Oh,
it's
right.
not
No,
edible.
no, no,
Yeah,
no, it's very tradable. It's very tradable.
Yes,
Yeah.
Does
yes.
that grow all year? Is that
Green
really?
gold.
Well,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah.
Um,
100%.
So, and hemp can be used for hempcrete, and you can create medicines out of it, and you can create concrete out of it, and so on. There's loads of other.
People have to be forward
creating
thinking.
uses.
These guys like Musk and Bezos. I mean, they're talking about about leaving the Earth and going to Mars. I mean, really, ultimately, there's going to be a problem. There's a very famous fly study years ago where they put flies in a little echo environment about the size of this table. It was a little like 1 foot by 2 foot by 3 foot cube, not a cube, but a rectangle block. And they put flies in there, and it was a little environment. And first of all, went from like because they procreate very fast, right? So it'll be like 1,000, then 10,000, then 50,000. The guy comes in, and one day all the flies are dead. Very famous fly expert. They're dead. He goes, "Geez, that was surprising. I thought they like peter out." No, it's like that. So then he gets this thing, and he makes it twice the size. Okay, and all that happened is it just went 2 more days.
Yeah.
2 more days, the same thing happened.
Yeah.
Then he made it like way bigger. And he got like 3 more days out of it. And he goes, "Holy cow!"
So then
like
suddenly
a million
there's
flies
No,
dying.
unbelievable. And he goes, "Jesus!" So that's what made him think. Look, at some point, the Earth is going to run out of space for people. What the number is, we don't know.
They're all going to die out
Well,
immediately.
something has to happen because the Earth can't sustain it. Could be COVID. Could be COVID times 6, right? It could be who knows what it is,
So
right?
it's extinction. It's extinction of the human race.
Well, unless we have planets to go to. But my point about that was, these are things that we should be looking at. Where else can we go? And also, it's not all going to be fun and diplomacy. I mean, imagine China running out of water.
Do you have the
Okay.
chat box?
You think
Yeah,
China's going to
China-
ask for water?
On the
No, they're going to take it.
on the
Say,
previous
listen,
one?
guys, we don't have any water unless you want 3 billion guys on your doorstep tomorrow.
The old.
Give us some. That's what would happen.
They're already importing food from Africa, right? So they already all you have to
the
do is sever
common
that
stock,
chain. But if you
the
sever that
live
chain, they are
chat and
finished.
people that make
So that you
comments.
can't do.
Well,
So they're importing their grain from another
they wouldn't
country.
allow themselves to be finished because so many
Find a
people.
chat box.
Yeah.
I don't care what you
Previous
say.
one,
3 billion
exactly
people is a
were
formidable
responding
force,
to it.
It's huge.
right? Not just.
You can't even imagine it, actually.
Well,
It's so big.
if you do the math, on that, let's forget about just storming the beaches. Let's just talk about manufacturing. But but 2 billion. So they have to get the resources, but they're also buying tons of steel. They're doing lots of mining. I mean, it's amazing.
They're building fast bikes now. You know, they don't even need a car.
And they're laughing because they're not spending all of their time, all of their energy on wokeism,
I'm complaining.
on compliance,
Yeah.
on running off. I mean, we spend so much time on the minority that at some point you are being prejudicial against the majority.
Yeah.
And it's like, geez, at some point, I mean,
Special needs all the time.
should you build the whole world for wheelchairs?
Yeah.
I'm not kind of wheelchair people at all, but I'm saying at some point it doesn't make sense that every single thing in the world, it's pretty simple, have wheelchair. What about wheelchair cars? Now I can only buy a car that is a wheelchair car. I go, what about me? I don't want a wheelchair car. I don't want a wheelchair ramp. Sorry, it's my house. Sorry, you gotta have one. We're not allowed to have doorknobs anymore.
Really?
Yeah, because there's people. We can only have handles on the door.
Oh, the long.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, because there's 12 people in Vancouver that don't have hands. 12 people don't have hands. They can't do the knob. So all 2.5 million doorknobs in Vancouver have to be changed to handles.
So you're in a tank.
Does that make sense?
Well, so the Green New Deal was, if you look at it, it was very interesting because they said, and Biden's now pumping trillions of dollars into this when he said he wouldn't. Instead of building Trump's infrastructure bill with rail and rail freight and so on, and big infrastructure, 40%, like there's earmarked money for 40% of America's buildings to be demolished and rebuilt again using slightly different materials. So
they're keeping the market going.
So it's just keeping the building market with these overpriced materials, as you were saying. So they're creating this. There's obviously been some pork barrel spending here, where everyone's like, okay, we want to eliminate history, we want to eliminate beauty, we want to make sure that all old things die, and we live in plastic boxes.
Look
now.
at Obama was in power. This is Obama 2.0. Okay, Obama. What happened? Flight of capital, $3 billion left America. Unemployment went up. Price of houses went down. Inflation was out of control. It was like, there was a nightmare. And it's the same thing's going to happen again with Biden, but worse. He's got Carter incarnate. I mean, remember the Carter? You don't remember it, but if you read about Carter, Jimmy Carter. I mean, I knew guys that served under him.
Peanut farmer.
It was unbelievable. The guy was a control freak. I mean, he was even in charge of the, if you want to play tennis on the White Horse tennis lawn, you had to talk to Carter. I mean, he was a real control freak, but he was I won't call him an idiot. But not a businessman. Okay. I mean, look at Reagan came in and said, listen, here's what we're going to do. We're going to shrink the government. We're going to lower taxes. Boom.
Success.
Takes off. That's what Trump did too, by the way. Same thing. It's like, if you reduce taxes that much, it's not, you don't have to be a rocket scientist to figure that out. And you don't have to look at Trump.
Where is Trump now?
Well,
he's the office of the former president.
I don't know. I mean,
in
I don't know. He has a beautiful wife. He has a private plane that rivals any private plane in the world. He's living in Mar-a-Lago, eating Big Macs, and has a porn star as a mistress. I mean, I don't know. I think he's in heaven now.
Oh, right.
So
he's the gunner. He's the intelligent one. He's got GPS locked on target.
So,
there's nowhere for you to go. There's just ain't nowhere for you to go, man.
Yeah.
So
in the tank, outside the tank.
So where from here? We're seeing the death spiral of the fiat currency economy with these new infrastructure projects going nowhere, more money printing. People then being encouraged not to do anything productive and to stay in their basements and lock themselves away from all social interaction.
Welcome to Wank Station. It's a free app. Download it now.
Yes, and there's more wanking.
There's more wanking.
Yeah.
What kind of wanking do you want to do next? No.
Yes, and there's no activity, and there's no.
It's really, I look at it as a game. So it's a game. Okay, and what happens is the guys who are successful. However you want to measure success, but a lot of times it's decided we measure success with, with a good job, good family, wealth. It's all the guys. There's always a common denominator in those guys. Number one, they work 8 hours a week. Okay, they're working 7 days a week, and that's one of them. Number two is they would look at the rules. They think macroeconomically, not microeconomically. So they're looking from the 30,000-foot view. Yeah. So you're sailing across the land. Trump comes in, or you get a left-wing government in, and I'm gonna start shaking my decisions this way, right? Just like we talked about bracketing. Yeah. Bracketing last night, where I can guess a number. If he guesses a number between 1 and 1,000, I can guess it in 13 guesses. Can you believe it?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. You got the number?
Yeah.
Is it higher than 500?
No.
Is it higher than 250?
Yes.
Is it higher than 200?
Yes.
So now I know it's between 200 and 250 in 3 guesses, right?
Hmm.
So let's take out the 200, and I'm just going to say, so it's between 200 and 250. Is it higher than 25?
Yes.
Is it, so I'm going to add 12 to that, is it higher than 37?
No.
So now I know it's between 25 and 37. So I'm saying in
Yeah,
5 guesses.
You
So you
still
go-
got 6 left.
Well,
Seven.
you can't cut it in half any more than that, right? So
Yes.
5 to 37 is, so is it higher than 31?
Hmm.
So 31, 36. So is it higher than 33?
Yes.
So now you're
Well, now I know it's
two
either,
numbers.
is it higher than 35?
No.
Is it 34?
Yes.
9 guesses. You saw it here live.
Yeah.
9 guesses out of 13,000, okay? And for the lotto numbers, to my, they are.
Oh,
No,
we got cut off.
That's called bracketing, okay? So
yes.
by cutting things in half, you can always zero in on your target. And
that was unto toe.
that was one of the other characteristics of a successful person. So
Yeah.
they're working 80 hours a week. They're looking macroeconomically at society and at the rules of the government, because they're always changed, like playing Monopoly. Like another government comes in, right? And half the time, these governments, especially the lefty ones, are trying to thwart the success of the rich guy, the guy that has the employees and the profit. Why is he so rich? Why does he can do that? Why is he, fucker? We're gonna get that guy and tax him more. We're gonna put the screws down on the guy. All he does is he just beebs and wobs. He's like a boxer in the ring. It's like Conor McGregor. You can't put him down. You change the rules. You change the rules. He changes as fast as you can. You can't change as fast as he changes the rules, right? And by the way, it's not a global economy. If I get really pissed off, I'll just leave my sandbox and go to Monaco. I mean, you can't do it. So you're better to work with these guys than fight them, because there's no way you can compete. It's like the famous drug lords that were bringing drugs in from Colombia, and the cops couldn't pin them down because the drug lords had better equipment than they had. They bought planes that go 30,000. The drug lords bought ones that went 40,000. They bought the 50,000 ones. They bought the 60,000 ones, because not only did they have more money than the government. That was what's his Esteban? What's his name? Escobar. But he can move fast. I mean, he could buy a 60,000 foot military plane in like 3 days.
Yes.
A government can't do that.
Yes, they got to
procurement contracts. That guy, this guy.
Go to
the committee. Go to the committee. Then you get some woke politicians come in. Will this be a low green emission airplane? Will it be high green? Meanwhile, he's flying cocaine in speed of light, right? And it's like it's a joke. So that is the thing.
But then they can issue themselves more. So the only thing they have is the printing press. The thing they can do is issue themselves with more currency.
Print more.
That's
but a
politician
politician is just human, and sometimes people underestimate our own intelligence. Everyone's intelligent here. Look around this room here. Nothing in this room, even your little iPhone, your Apple phone, nothing in this room got built or invented by anyone smarter than us. Okay, collectively in this room right here, we're all human. We all make mistakes. That's why pencils have erasers. We make mistakes. Okay.
Yes.
And everything in here got invented by smart people. Now let's talk about the government employees. How smart are they? Maybe there could be an exception where they're not as smart sometimes, because sometimes the government will hire
one doesn't know what the other one's doing
with less strict bar, and they don't communicate.
Yeah.
They're always infighting, and they're the ones that are trying to make the rules on how to hurt the businessman, the taxpayer, the drug cartel. All that. So there's no battle. You're better off working together. There's a very, very famous saying in the Japanese art of war: if your enemy is superior, run away. If he is equal, negotiate.
Is that the Chinese book?
It's Sun Tzu.
Yeah, and if he's inferior, squash him.
Yes.
But the importance of that saying is you never want to fight. You never want to fight. Okay, that's the last resort. You fight. Okay, negotiate or run. Okay, that's how the government should think about the common person now. Or when I use the word common loosely, the average businessman, the average entrepreneur, the hard worker, the employer, right? Because we're not confined to the fences of a country anymore. It's a global economy. You can go wherever you want. And that's the problem. And they're not thinking that way. So people like Bezos, I mean, Jesus, they're not even thinking the Earth anymore.
Yes,
they're leaving. They're going to Mars.
Well, normal rich guys die in a helicopter crash.
Yeah.
These guys want to die in the upper atmosphere.
How about Elon Musk? NASA for 30 years tries to build a rocket that can re-land.
Yes.
Right. They got 100 engineers. Billions of dollars.
I thought Australia was not.
Yeah. No,
and they wipe the tapes.
And Musk says, "Oh, give me 12 guys, I'll do it myself." And now he's got the Saturn rocket turning around and landing itself.
Yes.
And all these guys for like for 30 years, well, we could have done that.
They wiped the tapes from the Apollo project, and I think what happened was Kubrick filmed it in Elstree Studios up the road.
Did they wipe the tapes for the same reason the BBC wiped tapes of Top of the Pops, because they didn't have enough tapes?
Right. No, it was just that. They were instructed that to like delete the part, like the past wisdom. It became this notion of old hat. It's like old hat. It was irrelevant. But actually, to get from Earth to orbit, as with the Apollo program, the learning process is of doing that was so important, and then digitizing that and taking that into machine learning, and saying, okay, well, how do if we know how to get from surface to moon or surface to orbit, how can we then do orbit to Mars? That the institutional history, the institutional memory of that, all wiped. And so what it seemed that Trump did was he said, look, I'm going to give you to Musk all of the paperwork, or all of the tapes that exist with these inefficient people in NASA, and just do it as a startup, see what you can do. And then if you do that well, then we'll do that as a pilot. Then we'll do Mars. That was seemed to be what Trump and Musk were heading for there. And he, as you say, did very well. Now, you were asking about earlier to recall, like, where's the trans thing? Where's the squashing of masculine, feminine energy coming from? What's the motivation behind that? And Alex Jones, who's said so many. Has had so much insider information and has been so right in recent years, had on Joe Rogan's podcast had a theory about this, which was the reason why there's been no new Apollo project is not because they can't try and go to space. The space technology has been degenerating over the decades. They don't do any shuttles anymore. The only thing is now the Musk startup. Now, Alex Jones said, look, in Seattle, in Microsoft, what they're doing is all the tough guys who were astronauts are now going inside. They're going into the inner space, and they're taking psychedelics to the extent that they have heart attacks. Like in the moment between when they had the heart attack, when they defibrillate, they go across the veil and they see like the other side, which may be our future selves of the gray aliens with like big heads, no sex, like big eyes. And the classic gray.
Well, I thought you promised there would be no smoking cannabis on this podcast.
So apparently you have the astronaut types who are going across the veil. They're seeing something, and they're being told, look, we have the gateway technology to the next stage. We can give it to you, but you humans, you're too destructive. You've got nuclear weapons. You blow yourselves up all the time. You've got this masculine, feminine polarity. Like maybe they're us from the future. Maybe that's our future selves, these gray aliens with the big heads and spindly bodies, desexed. And so the notion perhaps is, well, to be given the gateway technology to the next stage, you need to like minimize conflict. You need to tamp down on all the human energy out there, all of the different people having their different interests and as you say, interacting in a marketplace. And try to crunch it all down, to crunch down all the conflict that's creative, and make men have more estrogen and women have more testosterone, and then you can just balance out this equation so that there's no polarity.
Then we become like that movie called Children of Men when no one can have a child anymore.
Yes, and that's what we're seeing. That's what we're seeing now. Men have estrogen from plastics, from BPDs. From all of these estrogen mimics in plastics, and that makes us lose our testosterone.
But all you'll end up doing is you'll make like a super king. So you'll have a bunch of feminine men, but be a couple of men that didn't do that or didn't fall prey to it. Maybe they're farmers in Texas living off a cattle farm.
Yeah,
and they'll become the Herculean leaders of the feminine man. So all you do is create another William the Conqueror.
Yes,
or Wallace, Wallace, another William Wallace.
Yes,
it'll be right.
Yes.
So, if you believe that could happen, then you could also believe in Fantasyland, I guess. But I just don't see that happen. I mean, nature itself is really based on natural selection. That'd be the most scientific explanation to how we've evolved.
Now we're in a position where a lot of people have children via IVF, right? So the one thing we know from bacteria, through plants, through animals, through humans, the only thing we know about every organism is, one, it got to sexual maturity and survived, natural selection, and two, it successfully reproduced and its descendants did the same every generation. We've broken that cycle now, because the people who reproduce in the past maybe 30, 40 years have a disconnect from the ability to reproduce without gonads, without IVF. So they could wean themselves on, and the genes could be selected. The one set of genes that we know always selected for is the ability to reproduce, survive to sexual maturity, and do it again. That generational nexus in the genes has always been in the chain of generations. We've broken that, because now we have people who only have kids through IVF, and maybe breeding in the need for IVF in future generations.
Well, at the base level, we're all cells. Okay. And what's a cell's mission? To reproduce. Okay.
Yeah.
And that's why, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy, whenever you get down to survival, on the bottom of the pyramid,
I think Wi-Fi is the bottom of the pyramid.
Yeah, it's fight or flight, right? And that's a cellular level. So that instinct to procreate, that instinct to multiply, I think it comes from a cellular level.
Yeah.
And the instinct to make all other things unimportant if your life is at risk comes from that base level. And so whether you're using artificial insemination, whether you're whatever your processes are, I think that we are still there. I mean, we
you
still
could see a catastrophe
at a base level. At base
you
level,
could see a catastrophe though, where we breed in a generation of IVF necessity. That's then taken into the next generation. Let's say the tech degrades.
Hey,
let's say we lose the tech. Then you got all these. Then you have got children.
Well, what about the danger? I mean, what about the danger of? I mean, we're playing God already. I mean, there are people that propose that curing all of the people that would have otherwise died is proliferating some diseases that we've never seen before. Is, like, I mean, maybe nature had a, and this is not proven, but there's theories saying, there's a lot of people that have been able to, have only been able to live because of some antibiotics, some drugs, some procedures where normally they would have died.
Yeah.
And what if nature actually had a mission for those group of people to die so that something else worse didn't cultivate? And maybe we'd be seeing that. So that's at a very base level. At a higher level, you could say people that you're giving estrogen to, people that you're doing, you're playing with their gonads at a young age. Wait a second, that'd be a different podcast. No, I'm talking about with that's
like next week.
Genital manipulation. I mean, now they're giving puberty blockers.
Yes,
right. I mean, we're really playing around like God with genetics, with DNA, with it's happening right now. Maybe COVID is something they were playing around with in the Wuhan laboratory. Who knows? But it's a dangerous thing because there's always a yin and a yang, and having a background in programming and writing computer code. I mean, so many times we go in and we fix a routine, and it unleashes a mess of other problems that we never anticipated. Right?
Well, as you say, every cell wants to reproduce, but unregulated reproduction is a tumor. Like every cell can be a tumor.
Yeah, that's correct.
If it decides to have a rebellion, if it has a revolution and does its own thing. You were saying about manipulation of genetics, and I was at Harvard for a conference, and I met George Church, who created CRISPR, the gene editing technique, and he was saying, this was summer 2017, and he looked me in the eye and said, "This is getting out of hand. We don't know how to regulate the CRISPR because we made it open source. We open sourced it to the academic community. That's global." Another global economy, and so any nefarious actor can use the editing technique in a morally neutral way to do whichever editing they wish. And so this is where you get the Wuhan the Wuhan virus from. There was a I'll send it to you. It's Ehrmantraut, I think his name was. He was an epidemiologist who featured on Joe Rogan podcast just in February, March last year, explaining like the biological basis for some of this Wuhan stuff. And he said, look, the problem is humanized mice. And as soon as I heard humanized mice, a lot clicked into place. So the humanized mouse is like, it's the best analog for the human microbiome that's not actually testing on humans. So they've it's genetic manipulation to have this barrier between animal mouse to humanized mouse to human. So it's a pathway for the disease to have this vector through from animal population.
There was a movie called Flowers for Algernon. You ever see that? It was from another book.
Flowers for
Algernon,
yeah.
And it was from another book where they found a way of making people that were less than normal intelligence super smart. And that theme came out again in Blade Runner too.
Algernon and the mouse. Yeah,
right. And so what happened to this guy is they took a guy who was basically slow, mentally retarded.
Yeah.
And they injected him. He became brilliant.
Yes.
Right. Because it had done it with the mice. So the mice super slow brain inactivity. Right.
Like CJD, the prion disease has an iteration time.
So then he saw his fate. And he knew, oh my God. And now I wish I'd never had it.
Yeah.
Which is also an Isaac Asimov film where they had
he doesn't die. The magic wears off.
Yeah, it wears off, and he becomes. And that happened in Blade Runner. So it's a common theme in a lot of shows. That's great because Blade Runner did it well as well. Have you ever seen the first Blade Runner?
Yeah.
Where he's like he's a superhuman, right?
Yeah.
He gets to his master and he says, "Aha! But the candle that burns twice as bright burns half as long, my son." Yeah. He squishes his eyeballs out.
Yes.
But it happened with and what was the other one? There was
Rutger Hauer. Yeah.
Rutger Hauer. Yeah. Yes. That was a great show. And that was a great scene.
I've seen
and so we can't do it. We made you burn so bright.
Yes.
You can't have a full life like everyone else, right?
Yes.
And so that's what could be happening right now with all these genetic alterations. I mean, sometimes we're throwing caution to the wind and doing too much.
Yeah, so
and we don't know what the outcome is.
So apparently, China has animal-human hybrids, monkey-human, ape-human, and pig-human hybrids, and they fall outside of human rights and outside of animal rights because the legality isn't there. So they're in the labs and they're in these grade 4.
Oh, I think I've seen some of them. Are they politicians in the U.S. cabinet?
Yeah. There's several that have been recruited to Biden's cabinet.
That's just a joke for our viewing audience. We're just joking. Okay, it's Trump's campaign.
Yeah, we're right on. So animal-human hybrids apparently exist in China. So the animal-human hybrid of the humanized mouse, that sort of made me think about some things like the CDC in America. That's the equivalent of our health service. Is the Centers for Disease Control, not eradication, not elimination, not cure, not prevention, control. And so the more I did research about this Wuhan lab, the more I realized, and we've been premiering it on the show, that to study a disease to cure it, the other side of that same coin is to weaponize it. Because to work out how it works is to work out how to use it. And so that became that became a real moment of kind of enlightenment of, oh wow.
There's always a team in society.
There's always a red team.
They always want to weaponize everything.
Yeah.
Stephen Hawkins in the wheelchair. He says that's why we don't see other people coming from other planets, because when we finally get the technology that allows us to travel the speed of light, somebody weaponizes it and they blow us up. So it's like we're always weaponizing, whether it's diseases, whether it's whether it's an emergency, whether it's a weapon, whether it's travel. In every single thing that can help society advance us has always become a weapon for control.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
The rocket, the rocket engine was developed because of propelling airplanes and bombs. The V2 rocket for the Nazis, right? The airplane propeller that turned into an advantage for the First World War.
Yeah, I remember that.
Hydrogen balloons.
But back in the noughties, there was before George Monbiot. He's an environmental campaigner. Before he went into like reintroducing wolves and bears into Scotland and having people eaten alive, and he was actually quite an interesting thinker. He said, "Look, it's the centenary of the Wright brothers' first flight today, first powered flight with wings, and we should mourn this day because actually it's not because of the environment."
Now, I'm a pilot. I'm a pilot.
It's not because of the environment. It's because of the amount of bombing that's been done based on like the amount of people that have died from aerial bombardment, the amount of culture that's been destroyed by cities being firebombed and so on. If you look at the amount of benefit of air travel versus the amount of tragedy and destruction that happened with aerial bombing, and it's the aerial bombing which is, as you say, improved each generation of flight. It's only the war footing that's had the
That argument has no
No,
it has no logic. It has no merit. And then we have to get rid of steel. Go get rid of swords.
I'm not saying get rid of. I'm not saying like the Meiji period banned the gun in Japan. So this Japanese problem with the Meiji period, right? They banned the gun, but they couldn't. They went back to samurai swords because they got the Gatling gun, and then all the samurais were blown up. And then in this period now, essentially, they said, okay, we're going to shut out.
I've seen the Last Samurai.
Yeah,
Tom Cruise. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So they went back to samurai, and they said, "Oh, we banned the gun for 80 years." And it's this real astonishing moment where it's never happened in society, in civilization, the history of civilization, is where you have a new tech, and it open sources itself, it's non-patented, and people get it, and they start experimenting with it, and then the government is strong enough to reel it back in. It didn't work with Volstead and alcohol. But they're strong enough to reel it back in and say, no, we're disposing of this. This is dangerous. Like instead I'm sorry. Instead you've got to experimenting with new wireless tech.
I love his lowness. By the way, we have a timeline here because I'm running out of time.
No, sure. We'll wrap up in a second.
Wrap up me. Okay. I prefer
then,
cellophane and something edible, please.
Yeah, exactly. So so you had the Meiji period where you had this reeling back the tech. But actually, we're in a position where businessmen like yourself, you don't need war. You don't need the war footing to innovate. You don't need the war footing to generate the energy in you to work those 8-day weeks. Yeah, and to wish to make movies and make new businesses and give people new value. But what we need
a lot of
the
technology we use comes from the war. It comes from the military.
Exactly. We need to harness
facial recognition.
The energy.
Cell phones, wireless.
We need to harness the energy of the war footing in peacetime to allow us to innovate, not to have that conflict, but just to benefit one another. And so that I think that was quite interesting in conclusion to that article, and maybe how we could move forward.
The sad thing is that
another guest arrived.
The sad thing is that you. I always say if you want to know what a man's going to do, just look what he's done. So let's say this: if you want to know what mankind's going to do, let's just look what he's done. History has repeated itself so many times in 3,000 years, over and over.
And it gets faster.
But why it does get faster? So why won't it repeat itself again? So is suddenly the laws of physics suddenly different? Has the world changed so much that now it won't just repeat itself again? I think it will. And you look at every society again. I like going through the big ones. I like the Greek society, like the Roman society, like the English society, the American society. It's falling now. It's a shorter period. But they basically all get full of themselves, compliant, super socialistic, where they give too much money away, and then all the non-workers start to benefit, and the whole thing falls apart. And what it does mostly is it lets your competition sneak up on you.
The Thucydides trap.
In Apple's case, it was Samsung, right? In America's case, it's China.
Yes.
In Britain's case, it was America, right?
The Thucydides trap. The rising power meets the existing power, and is there a war that destroys both?
That's right.
Athens versus Sparta. Is the paradigm for that. And so
the funny thing is too, I always like the fact there's very little archaeological or books written about Sparta.
Yes,
but
in the eyes of Athens,
Athens is fantastic, right?
Sparta is under the Athenian gaze. Sparta is viewed through the eyes of Athens, and actually they're very respectful.
I had a good debate with a professor at lunch yesterday, and he was talking about we were talking about the different cultures, because I think cultures aren't equal. I think cultures all and you got to be careful though, because I might say I like the Italian culture. Right. I don't like the Greek culture. Right.
Yes.
I don't like the African culture. But in those two tones right now, which one? You all be careful. I don't like the if I don't like the African culture, people go, oh, he's a racist, right? But if I don't like the Greek culture, that's fine, right? How is that? How is that fair? But getting back to culture, I say, well, people should really go back and read the history of these cultures. Let's go back and look through their libraries. Let's go back to Kenya 500 years ago, and let's look at their library. Well, guess what? They had no library. There were no books. They didn't write anything down. So there's a lot of cultures that didn't even write things down.
Like Sparta.
Sparta didn't write anything down. But the British society, the Roman society, they wrote a lot of things down because it went on for 2,000 years. 1,000 when it was flourishing, 1,000 to decline. It's like a tree, right? It has 3 lives: growing, dying, falling, rotting. 4 lives. You look at these cultures that end up magnifying their intellect by magnifying their intellect, and they always have huge libraries of content, of thought, of philosophy. And I mean, that's what separates a lot of them. And you start looking at, so let's look at the Greek society, the Italian society, the African society, the New Guinea society,
Oh,
the Chinese
with their priorities.
Look at the Chinese.
Yes.
Look at the written some of the written libraries of the old Chinese empires.
200 pyramids in Xi'an.
Egyptian, even the Egyptians.
Shenxi.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
Bokachi.
200 pyramids
Yeah.
in Shenxi province. And the Chinese, they were very clever. They kept them earth on them. So if you look at the pyramids in Mexico, in Teotihuacan, bad pronunciation, they were cut. If you saw the 19th century photos of those pyramids, they were covered in trees and grass and soil. And of course, now they've been exposed into. Hey, how are you? Come join us, Sunny.
Beautiful. Come on,
Nice
nice to meet you.
Fantastic. Thank you for coming. Mwah. Mwah.
Thank you for inviting
Sunny,
me.
Afsani, everyone. Welcome to the New Athens.
Thank you. I'm gonna-
Season 2, Episode 1. We have 2 wonderful guests. Russ Rossi, impresario and entrepreneur from out of Canada, great friend of the show.
Comedian from Canada.
And
Beautiful.
we have Sunny Afsani here. He's an independent investigative journalist. And we've been talking today about the state of pandemia and pandemonia. Because first we have a pandemic, and then we have all the demons. All the demons emerge, and it's so close. So pandemia, pandemonia.
Isn't that something what Trump was saying? He mentioned something I think last year, and he said it's like the world is under a huge spell. Without sounding like a lunatic, but it actually had quite a lot of relevance to it.
Howl to the moon all night.
Yeah, with the pandemic and the.
Yes. So we were talking the other night, and we were discussing this briefly. Where I really wanted to start was the trust in the plan idea, right?
Which plan?
Yeah, exactly. So what's the plan? Who's planning it? Because I think you're inside a whole lot of honeycombs that we don't really see. Because you've got your ear to the ground, you're working out what's going on. But I've heard this a lot recently. There's new messianic ideas about trust in the plan, whether it's from Q, whether it's from the anti-lockdown, like this city must fall, this government must fall. And so we were discussing it a little bit. And so I'm wondering, where's the confidence? We've been talking about all the problems, but where's the confidence and where's the hope coming from?
Well, I think it would be with the economic reform that Trump had when he was president. And I think that a lot of people have started to realize since Trump's been out and been replaced by this China puppet, Biden.
Beijing Biden.
That's it. Beijing Biden. So I think people are starting to realize what actually a great leader Trump was, being a leader of a nation and a ruling power, that being America. And I think over the decades, it's been so demoralized and, indoctrinated that Americans have forgotten their own power, all the power within America as a whole of it being a leading nation and, economically. And I think Trump showed that.
Oh.
So,
okay. Where is the plan now? That we have the office of the 45th president, the office of the former president out in Mar-a-Lago. And that's a great troll. We're having this presidential seal
Trump is
in
a
black and
troll
white.
in chief.
He's the great. My losers and my haters. Those great tweets from like 2013 and so on.
2012 as
yeah,
well.
yeah. I think of them at night. And then they can't help. Being born retarded. That was a great one.
I think it's great PR as well.
And so. Okay, so we have the investment in the Trump plan and the Trump initiatives, but now that's outside of Washington, and it was always outside the Beltway anyway. This was a New York idea. This was an idea from the business community.
Because he's not a politician.
Yeah, he's not a career
yeah.
politician, so he's not inside that honeycomb of pork barrel spending and corruption.
He may have been.
So. What now? Like, how are we going to build our own infrastructure? Because clearly he harnessed it a bit, and Dominic Cummings harnessed it for a short time here with the Brexit deal and with taking back control for the north of England of people who've been shut out for 50 years by the China system of evacuating all the infrastructure and all the industry out of the West. So we had these little moments where Trump and say Cummings in America, in this country, had access to the levers of power in the traditional infrastructure. But now that's been lost. So how do you build? Where's the hope? Where's the hope from there? Because you seem very confident.
I think it's not more so of the plan. I think I'm confident in the fact that people are awakening to this pandemic and this. I'm not saying that COVID is a hoax. I don't follow that conspiracy, but there is obviously it was a virus from Wuhan and it was a virus from China that a lot of us tried to expose and put it out there on social media, but we're being targeted by big tech. So, I mean, Trump was right, and I think he had ways of saving the economy and not shutting down all the businesses in the UK or even around the world. So, with his first cure, which was hydroxychloroquine. So had the media have listened and paid attention, then, businesses wouldn't have been shut down. There wouldn't have been so many lives lost, so technically he saved and potentially could save millions more if people actually listened to his first initial cure, which was HCQ.
Yeah. So Russ, where were you on that? Were you buying up supplies of hydroxychloroquine and I know you sort of move fast in these spaces.
HCQ and tonic and gin is a good drink.
Yes.
So as long as it's flowing through my brains, through my veins rather, the veins in my brain.
Quinine, yes, the quinine.
No, I mean I agree with that 100%. They don't like any narrative that doesn't fit the left wing, the Democrat left wing narrative, which is pretty well the same as the mainstream media, which is the same as CNN, which is the same as a lot of media, the BBC, the Canadian news media.
Yeah,
they didn't like Trump questioning the normal procedures of coming with a vaccine, coming with a diagnosis, and also it could threaten some of the pharmaceuticals revenue because some of his suggestions were cheaper.
Yes,
making less people billionaires, and the fact that he's not even not a doctor. They were like absolutely incensed that how dare you make these kind of comments. And in fact, most of the things that Trump has said in the end end up being true. Like the guy is not stupid. You can call him outrageous. Sometimes he doesn't hold his. He says maybe he's not the most diplomatic guy at times, but he's not stupid for sure. I don't believe he is. And at the very beginning when he came in and he said. They've been bugging me. Oh, they weren't bugging. I can't believe how outrageous. It ended up being true. Now they're after me for a Russia conspiracy. They're going to impeach. It was true, and it was nothing. Then another impeachment with a phone call to the not true. I mean, every single thing that he says so far ends up being true. Yet they still call him liar. They still call him non-producer. I mean, to me, it makes no sense, and I don't see the basis for.
Well, he's the opposite of. He's the fulfillment of Richard Gere's character in Pretty Woman, who is told. We were doing a bit of film critique earlier, and Julia Roberts' character says, "You don't build anything. You just destroy industry. You break up the shipyard." And then with the love of the woman, he comes around and the inspiration, and she makes him realize, oh, I need to build up the shipyard, not take it and break it up and take the assets to China and asset strip. And be a private equity, a vulture. Instead, I need to build something. And so the Trump is kind of the apotheosis of that, in the sense that he actually maybe he's got graft and maybe he worked with people. He's trying to build. He was trying to build something in his business career and trying to build something in his political ascendancy. And he's the opposite of that where Richard Gere starts.
Trump's done really well in terms of like global economical. Business deals like all across the world. Like a lot of us, many people didn't know that Trump had a golf course in the United Arab Emirates. So a lot of mainstream media, they were trying to target him, say he was a Islamophobic and he's racist and everything like that. But when you really look into his past and his history and his business success, it shows far from that. So I think during COVID, a lot of people had time being in lockdown, having businesses closed, to do a lot more research and find out what is really going on. And if America is the ruling nation, then technically countries should follow in suit when the leader of a ruling nation says something. And it seemed like he followed in suit. He let everybody know that the vaccines are not FDA approved. They're experimental drugs. And hydroxychloroquine is also a cure. And none of the following other countries listen to Trump. So I think I do have a lot of faith in, above all, God's plan. God is the best of planners, but I do think that Trump he's been correct about a lot of things, and I think he knows more than what he says, and it's probably really underestimated.
Well, it's what Taleb wrote a book recently called "Skin in the Game." He's a great trader and sort of theorist of economics, and he said, look, the people who you should bet on as having are those people with a track record. What have they done, and have they made predictions, future predictions that have been then shown to be right, and on what basis have they done so? And so if you look at people who are breaking things up, they're not making a future scenario where they're going to be able to make a prediction like, I'm building this shipyard today, and then in a year's time it's going to be ready, and then it's going to be producing something. It's a well, we'll sell off the paper, we'll sell off the contracts and sell the paper, and then we'll have some cash, but there won't be any future productivity which we can rely on. And so I think Taleb's notion of having skin in the game, like making a bet on the future and having that fulfilled, and then having that as a strike of your reputation. I think he's done really well there, and he's made predictions that have borne out.
A lot, yeah.
Well, he's acted quickly. He acted intelligently, quickly, and fearlessly. And even from the very start, when he came in, and there were problems with terrorists coming in on countries where the embassies had fallen apart, where all of the records had fallen apart because of civil war, and he banned flights. He banned all flights from those countries. And immediately he said, it's all anti-Muslim. I said, well, you know what? There were a lot of Muslim countries that could still come, but just not those ones that have fallen apart in civil war. Because he said, we don't want all these guys coming in because of what was happening. He was right. He said, some of these guys are justified, but there's other people that are sneaking in that way. They're saying, well, let's go in through that corridor, and we'll feign that we don't have any paperwork. And he says that's too dangerous for our country. He did the same thing with China. Once this virus came out, he banned all flights from China. Well,
this is what Dominic Cummings said in the Commons Committee the other day. He said, look, as we were saying on the channel and in the New Athens community as well, at the time, January 2020, this is an island nation. The first duty of the government of this nation is to its people. And we have control of the ports. The government has control of its own ports, airports, the seaports.
Yeah.
And the train port in St. Pancras.
Yeah.
And so there's no reason why the China virus should have entered this nation, because it's not porous. It's not got porous borders. You can't walk across the border.
Yeah.
There's not enough people coming in dinghies from Calais.
But you were letting them in. You were letting them in.
Yeah, so business travel continued, and travel from China and from other
Is that where it came from mostly, or it came from visitors?
Well, it came from the borders being open throughout January and February and March. So Cummings' notion was, look, I told these people, close the border, quarantine people 14 days on their way in, and protect the nation. Don't let it get into the nation. And then it's in the hospitals and old people's homes and so on. If it is a problem, if it is a serious problem, and it's a plague like the Spanish flu, which was killing young people in 1918, then we need to seal the border, do cordon sanitaire. It's very unfashionable.
Yeah.
The French notion of you create a border with men with rifles and you contain the disease, and then people who are inside that cordon sanitaire cannot leave, unfortunately, and we have to work out how to deal with quarantine and so on to get that border to be porous. But we don't say, the border is porous, we're gonna sacrifice the people on the inside, And so Cummings made this really, really scathing critique of how they could have acted in January, February, March of 2020. And I think Trump was trying, to the extent that people don't realize the office of the president, it's an office, it's like a room. And so, you've only really got control over that room. And then maybe there's tendrils out into the world, but it's a room, right? And so you only have so much control. And there are all these other entities which have their own agendas.
I do think they're connected in some ways as well. I mean, I think as much as he's not literally in the White House, I think he's got a lot more underneath
soft
power.
Yeah,
soft power. He's got a lot of soft power. And I think there's a lot of questions to be asked with Biden being in office. A lot of military optics and military things that would usually happen that haven't happened, or they've been replaced, guards being at the White House. I mean, when Obama was there, they were there 24/7. So,
Yes.
you know, there's a lot of strange situations happening over there.
So what you've got your ear to the ground. Russ, you're in with the Tucker crowd, and you have your ear to the ground there, and you've got your own sources. I know, Afsane, in Washington and elsewhere. What are we seeing now? Is there this fight going on behind the scenes?
Definitely, most definitely. There's always something going on underneath that we're not being told, because we've always got the propaganda and, like Ross said, the left-wing media, and you know, it's I mean, there's so much going on that I think the people may be unaware of, or maybe not ready to be able to understand how, you know, because Trump was thinking not just locally but globally. So when he makes decisions, he makes it for a global scale. You know, he's a businessman that's done, you know, help the economy globally, and he understands how he understands how infrastructure works. I mean, who says that unless, you know, he would know. So I think that economically, he knows exactly what he's doing, you know, in terms of having control with the Federal Reserve and the US Treasury. And also he made really great trade deals for the UK post-Brexit. So he let them know and was like, you know, you can have trade deals with Japan. And I thought that was really great. It was really good of Trump to do that. So I think he was doing a lot of soft power work with countries, letting them know economically they'll be okay if they didn't go by the, you know, the route that we all assumed it would head to. And I think a lot of people have been surprised with things happening with crypto and Bitcoin and the fiat dollar.
Well, you've got this sort of one belt, one road policy from China, which is like buying up all of Sri Lanka, buying up all the infrastructure there, then leasing it back and saying, look, well, if you can't pay the debts in our currency, then we'll take ownership of your ports and your port infrastructures, and we'll have our pipeline to the west and so on,
and create the digital currency system.
So Trump, I think, really had a notion that there needs to be a counterweight to that. People said he was an isolationist because he didn't start wars in the Middle East, which every other president's done for the past 50 years.
He never did that. That was very surprising.
And people say he's a racist, and then you say, well, how many people in the Middle East did he start a war? How many nations in the Middle East did he start a war with? And the answer is a big fat zero.
He didn't drop bombs. He actually ended up making business deals in the Middle East. Like the first country he went to when he stepped in as president was Saudi Arabia. So, you know, he just made business deals, and they've given him like these very traditional cultural significance kind of like rituals where they've given him like a sword of Saudi Arabia, or he's given.
The reason he has so many labels is that in today's woke society, if you ever say anything disparaging about a minority or a race, then you're racist. But the fact of the matter is, there are people that we don't like. You know, I mean, I know people that I don't like. Now, if it's a white person, it goes by with no thought whatsoever. But heaven forbid if it's a black person, because the first thing that comes up is, he's a racist. And Trump, sometimes he said disparaging, or he criticized everybody at some point. Well, not everybody, but he wasn't selective. Sometimes he criticized women. So, if you did, then you're sexist or misogynist, right? Or sometimes he might say, you know, if he criticized the person and he was gay, oh my God, he's homophobic. If he criticized black country, oh my God, he's racist. It's like, but he also criticized other countries, straight people. He criticizes everybody. But in today's society, if you criticize someone who's a minority or race, then right away you get labeled.
You can't be equal opportunities.
You don't have a right.
You can't be equal opportunities critical.
Well, you know what? So you don't have a right to not like African Americans. I can tell you right now, there's lots of African Americans I don't like. Okay, and but if you get too vocal about that, they go, they focus on that. And there's a lot, but there's lots of white people, Anglo-Saxons I don't like. Okay, and that's why he was labeled, because he wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid to say who I liked or who I didn't like, and he wasn't afraid to legislate against minorities if that was the cause. If that was needed. And that's how he gets that label. But I just found that he was kind of sometimes rude to everybody.
Well, it's interesting that the idea of the government protecting its citizens. So if the government's duty is to its citizenship, then you should be quarantining people at the border when you have a non-porous border in Britain and it's an island. You should be saying, okay, well, if the passport system in this country is broken down, then we should have a moratorium on people entering without papers so they can work out who they are. You know, that's serving your people who you are nominally the employee of, which of course is not the case because most politicians are the middle managers of the globalist elite class.
Yeah.
So your duty is to the people who are citizens of this nation, and that's who you are the public servant of. And so that's what we've seen, I think, so little of recently.
Absolutely.
It's also been nice to see Trump like employ people like, his 16-year-old caddy man from his golf cart, is now his social media and working with him, or was working with him at the White House, or a local hacker with a little tiny room to figure out the election fraud. So, I think he's done really great for the economy and was really underestimated. And I think now we're being shown what it was like without Trump being in office. We've got war that started all over again, border crisis, the election fraud, and it's not even just an American issue. It's become a global issue around the world. So
I was moved on election night with Trump 4.5 years ago when he got in. I was in New York, and it was very moving. And and I'd met Trump years ago in a rental deal, right? It was just like, hello, that's it. So not more than a conversation. That wasn't a conversation. But I went on a mission because I was I'm not American, but I thought some people don't like this guy. And I went on a mission to meet people that had met Trump. And I met about 16 of them, okay? That worked for him or know him well, including one of his ex-wives. They all love him. Every single person that I know that has met Trump love him. They like him a lot, right? And they go, he's a great employer. He's a great guy, super loyal. Every single one that hates Trump, I always say, have you met him?
I
No.
used to hate Trump. So
And they said,
really?
no, but have you met him?
No.
Yeah, but no, what I was saying. So every hater of Trump has never met Trump. I'm going, well, how do you know you don't like him? You should try meeting him. Yet every person that I met that met Trump, because I was trying to do some metrics on this, and it's very inconsistent. I go, where are you getting your information from? And I found out they were getting it from a pajama party.
From media, mainstream
Pajama
media,
party,
basically.
okay, so they have no basis for this argument. They have no basis, no personal basis. They're reading it in mainstream media. They're reading it from
The media was the
media that
worst.
hate him. So I mean, what's
It makes you end up hating Trump. Like I completely despised him for years.
Really?
Yeah,
Why? On what basis?
This is the thing. It was actually, I think, the mainstream media. I mean, I just used to think he was, maybe egotistical. I wasn't sure. To be honest, I think it was because I didn't do enough research about him or his past or what he had done even before president. And I started to stop listening to what mainstream media was saying and started to just watch what he was doing. And when you see what he was doing everything according to the book, everything by the law. He was making the economy great worldwide. He was bringing back the military, even though, the truth is starting to come out about the wars. Like he even said that we destabilized the Middle East and we should never have been in there. Now, if he was really anti-Islamic or Islamophobic,
he's a very masculine, fast-moving decision maker, sometimes rolling over naysayers. And the left wing does not like that. The people that protect the weak and the whining, they don't like that because he's in there boisterous. We'll do this, we'll do that, we'll do this. And that rubs them the wrong way. Nothing rubs the left more than telling them what to do. However, they're the first ones that love to tell you what to do.
So, interestingly, all the critique about Trump has been with these personal slurs, with this racist idea, with this sexist idea, as misogynistic as you say, and then picking out critiques of people not based on their protected characteristics under something like the Equalities Act, but just because they're incompetent or inefficient or in the way.
I've ridiculous accusations. Somebody
and it's always personal. It's always about tone.
They
He's
tried
a
to label
pedophile.
him
He's a
with
rapist.
Epstein,
He's a pedophile.
yeah.
He says, well, can you show
just
me?
because there was one
Can you show me that, please? Where do you see that? And I always call them out. They can never show it. They have no evidence.
Yeah.
They have all these statements that have no evidence. And they go, well, they say this. I go, who are they? Who's they? They never have any evidence. So you call them out, you'll find out.
They have anonymous sources, but they never actually factualized what the media was saying. But even with Epstein, there was one picture with Epstein, and he admitted, and he said it himself. He said, I'm not a fan of him. I kicked him out of Mar-a-Lago. And, so I think if it wasn't for Trump, then Epstein and Maxwell would never have been arrested. So,
Yeah, he did actually give, he was the one person who the FBI said actually called up during the first Epstein investigation, 2008, and actually volunteered information about him and his nefarious activity at Mar-a-Lago and so on. And so, look, this is not something I'm not keeping the wall of silence here of the elite class and saying, look, we're all going to keep quiet about one another's misdeeds.
I have to go.
You got to go.
Yeah. So
Russ, well, thank you so much for coming down.
Thanks for having me. I really enjoyed it. Having been here for 2.5 hours.
Time is flying when you're having fun.
time. Yeah. So When's the next episode? This is so much fun. I'm going to
So-
fly back every week. I mean, this
Fantastic.
is
Yeah,
fantastic.
we're on every week. We normally do Friday Night Lights, but since we're all available on a Saturday afternoon, we thought we'd come out from here. So this has gone out live.
What a delight! What a great job
And
you're
we're going
doing.
to make a clip version, and we're going to make a more edited
Fantastic.
version and bring out the best bits. And then we'll move on next week with some more. Hopefully from Sunny, who'll be a regular. Now we've been brought together by yourself, and we can now analyze like current events as they flow.
As they're going.
With new guests in our hot seat. And thank you so much for coming and
Fantastic.
joining season 2, episode 1 of the New Athens podcast. Rossi.
Fantastic, great.
Thanks for coming.
And great job.
Just
Come join
thank you. Okay.
in the hot seat.
Where I feel a little bit taller.
But yeah, and you got your own camera. So we have Philip here, a portrait of a lovely globalist cybersecurity advisor. She's wonderful. She's from Tenerife. And she's
Lovely.
been presenting to Angela Merkel. We met her at a cocktail party the other night. We has a live portraiture, as you can see.
Love it.
But so Afsana is putting her in the shade here, and
Sunny
we'll
for
have
short.
you in the frame next week.
No, I'd rather not.
I think you're making wonderful oil.
Thank you.
No, so we've been discussing like perhaps how our society is in a kind of death spiral at the moment, with people being inactive. You said that people have had potentially a lot of time to do some more research about different information feeds and perhaps what's
Find
going on behind the
alternative
scenes.
media, I think. Yeah.
What's your agenda? How do we start that? How do we start that program? How do we start getting the word out? In your opinion?
Well, I think it's subconsciously starting to happen as time goes on. Since I think before the elections, when people started to realize that mainstream media wasn't very accurate. It wasn't really reporting as it should. So I think as COVID went on, people started to ask questions, and I personally was just watching what the leader of the nation was doing at that time, which was Trump, because when as the saying goes, when America sneezes, England catches a cold.
Yes.
So I thought, well, whatever happens there will soon to be happening in the UK. So the mainstream media is starting to lose its credibility. It's constantly falsifying their so-called facts, bringing out. I feel like they're becoming the conspiracy theories, especially now with Fauci emails being exposed,
Yes.
and this is something.
So what Alex Jones and Trump were saying all along has been shown to be the case with the Wuhan lab funding, and we've been discussing this past.
Right. Was Alex Jones saying that last year or in 2020?
He was saying it in early 2020. Yeah,
Okay.
that if you look at Fauci's career, and then the Pandemic documentary came out, which corroborated a lot of his claims, that Fauci's research on HIV and keeping the antiretrovirals back to do more human research, then the ban on gain of function research in America meant that he set up with $7.4 million of CDC money that Wuhan lab, and so Alex Jones had reported on that InfoWars for some time,
Right.
and that was very early, and Trump was clearly that is a nexus point in media. What I wanted to ask you is about people's media personae, because look, if you take us in this room, I mean, we met last week, and Russ introduced them. We had a nice time, and then if you think about all of our lives outside of this very managed space, and we're managing our faces, we're managing our posture, we're managing what we say, we're trying to say the best that we can think and say. But
this is the thing that's happening.
But
now.
we only see, and let's say of somebody we don't know, like as Russ was saying, the people who have met Trump and like, trying to get the first-hand testimony of like, up against the person, that you get perhaps more valid evidence than seeing it through a lens of any kind of media organ, which is at a distance, like speaking in front of the helicopter or whatever, or so you can get this idea of us as media personae who might be very different from how we are outside of this very managed space with 3 cameras, if we break the fourth wall. So yeah, how do you think we should assess these, like the thing we can't know, which is like who these people really are, versus who they present themselves as?
Right. I think, well, it's slowly starting to evolve within itself. I think independent media researchers and independent media as a whole. So everyone seems to have their own personality nowadays. Everybody's starting to see the facade, the smoke and mirrors. So they're wanting to report on it and just tell their side of the story. So we're getting to see people from all over the world kind of have their own personas within their TV personality of them reporting on the news or them just reporting in general. So things are starting to evolve in that way. And I think it's becoming a huge phenomenon, especially since COVID and especially since the pandemic. And there's a lot of confidence with people reporting on the news and reporting on what they see, and
lack of queues outside hospitals, empty hospitals.
Absolutely,
Yes.
empty hospitals.
You see citizen journalists, whether they're using Twitter or YouTube,
Exactly.
Then just going to the places and showing what is there.
Right.
Yeah.
And
Which was really inspiring.
And that automatically is starting to bring the ratings down of a lot of these mainstream media news, fake news, or as Trump likes to put it, lamestream media news. So people are starting to shift away from mainstream media and away from the news that's projected on the television and moving to alternative independent researchers that are there on the ground. They're able to see it for themselves and report it there and then, so people are looking for alternative media and alternative news. So.
Okay, so let's sort of lay out a plan. So you have, because this is a think tank, right? So let's we can do the thinking and we can show what thinking we are doing. It's which is actually worthwhile, because then it's not like the cabal. It's it's a debate, and we've got many people out there who are following us, and I know you do too. And so I think there's a kind of a trap. There's a pit trap in the confidence of trust the plan. And what we've been trying to do at the New Athens is take, for example, a couple of weeks ago, a very good friend of the show posted on our WhatsApp kind of think tank group a petition for the government to stop lowering arts funding. They lowered it by.
Do you mind if I ask the name of the organization of the petition?
It was a petition to the House of Commons. So if they get more than 100, if they get more than 100,000 signatures, they can force a
Was it officially via
debate.
change.org?
No, it was the government. It's government's own petitions portal. Right. Okay. So a friend of ours, in all good faith, she said, "Look, the government have a budget that they're giving to arts funding, and they're lowering this budget this year. We need to have a petition against that lowering." And that just struck me as it was in good faith on her part, but it's a passive response. It's saying, "Please, sir, may I have some more?" It's Oliver, right? Not Oliver. Please, sir. Oliver, never before has asked for more. So we'll take that paradigm of petition, on our knees, asking, "Please, sir," and we say, "Look, that's not very empowering, and it's not really using your energies in a positive way in the world." Okay, you've got 65 million people in this country. Let's say 1% of them are interested in the arts. And let's say they're interested to the amount of £1. So if you can then aggregate that interest in arts funding, £1, 650,000 people, that's 650,000 quid. There's your seed for your arts funding.
Would you consider the same value in digital art?
Yeah, you don't need to wait for the government budgetary commitment to come down and filter down through the NGOs, filter down through the local authorities. They all take their cuts. They all have employees that are administering the Arts Council budget, and so they've got to pay for the administrator and pay for the actually arts project. And then you have perhaps not a very good marketplace to decide what's good art and what should get funded. Maybe you have a load of box checking and so on. You've got box filling people, so you had this whole squirearchy, this whole of faff, rather than, okay, let's get the people together They can make a blockchain fund. Like who wants arts, and who wants to then judge the quality of the beauty in art, and then have a real marketplace for that.
I'm sure
And
they have that by now. No?
so that's what we've been building with ArtChain over the past few years in terms of creating a democracy of beauty. So ordinary people who don't have sophisticated training in postmodern art love beauty, symmetry, proportion. Where do people go on holiday? Go Rome, Paris, Egypt to see the pyramids. They want to see beautiful things. They don't go to Brasilia to a concrete jungle.
I think that the
people
waterfall
love
is
beauty,
beautiful in Brazil.
and if you ask people, if you get people to value in a democratic framework what is beautiful, what is pleasing, where should arts funding go, they'll tend towards classicism, beauty, proportion, harmony, these things which our brain modules are stimulated by and give us more energy. Whereas what we have now is our arts funding, let's say, based on these critiques of sophisticated postmodernism, where ugliness is beauty and we have to delete the meaning of all words. And so you have sharks chopped in half in tanks and so on as being the art that is given cultural credence and is an embarrassment for our generation. But if you bring back democracy to that framework, where you get people to decide what you're attracted to, then this is more attractive than the horror show of postmodern nihilism.
I mean, what's the artist, Marina Abramovich?
Abramovich. Oh yes,
Abramovich.
with her cannibalism ceremonies.
What do you think of that art?
Yeah,
they put that in the name of art, right? I just found that too hard to believe that it could be called art.
So I went to an art gallery in Savile Row in Mayfair a couple of years ago, and I saw the best piece of art. So to expose this problem, it wasn't demonic and paedophilic as some of this as we were discussing. So it was a mirror. It was a mirror, right, like a pier glass. You have a full length mirror to get dressed, and the mirror was a screen, and the screen was projecting a guy with a camcorder, and he was walking around, filming his own feet walking around a pedestrian crossing. And it was displayed in a long format like this. So it was like a whole, you could see as if you were looking down at the floor. It was just total nihilist wankery of like, I'm going to look at my feet and the way the shadow moves. And it's like, so they would get no views on YouTube, right? It would get no views on a cinema. It would get
views on YouTube.
Well, that's what our media acceleration is for. So we got to start from somewhere. So it would not air as an ad, and it would not air as a feature, right?
That might be due to marketing issues.
That's our next goal. Nevertheless, that video, and it was only like a minute long, and it was on a loop. Why was it interesting? Because it showed that it wouldn't work in a cinema, it wouldn't work on YouTube, it wouldn't work on TV, but it works in an art gallery, because it's a video, but because it's an art gallery, it doesn't have to be a good video, it has to be an art gallery video, which lowers the standard. It means that anything goes, because the artist's intention is the only important thing, right? And that was that was stunning. It was stunning because the art wasn't greatness or aspiration too. It was like lowered bar. It's like it's okay to do wanky videoing your feet,
Wasn't there like 2 years ago there was some art of a banana being sellotaped
to the floor? Yes,
it was to the wall.
Yeah, to the wall. Yes,
and it got sold for how much? Like 800,000, something ridiculous.
Yes. Well, it's a kind of
speculation.
But it's kind of like it's a nihilist kind of screw you. It's like it's screw you to anybody aspiring, and it's just creating this fake out of the money deal. Oh, it's worth the money, so it must have value. But you see
valued it, though?
But you see how money and value are splitting up. So money was a tool. Money could be a tool for humans to decide how we exchange our wishes. Right? I wish to build a city. You wish to build a farm. We can swap our wish time based on, I can pay you this amount of wishes because you don't want to work on my city and I don't want to work on your farm. So that could be a way that you view money, or you could view money as this way thing that eats us.
Well, it depends on the value of commodities nowadays. I mean, the initial commodities always been gold, oil, and drugs, and now it's been shifted into a form of crypto, and with Bitcoin and Dogecoin that came out. So it's, it's starting to, like you say, it's starting to change. The value of money is starting to change, but maybe I might be slight traditionalist into what is value. I still do think gold, oil, and drugs are of value. So more than even possibly Bitcoin, whereas that's got a value to it. I think it's a tough one to kind of
evaluate,
but it's always good to like not have all your eggs in one basket. And so I try to keep a very open mind when it comes to currency, commodities, and the value of commodities. What is a value? I think Trump mentioned something about a week ago about how he said, I think Bitcoin's a scam. So a lot of people are speculating maybe it might be because it's going to regulate it. I mean, whether we like it or not, we seem to be shifting towards a digital currency. So, when I used to loathe Trump, I used to make fun of him because I used to think, he should focus on his own economical issues of his fiat currency that's backed by nothing.
Yes.
So I think in terms of going back to the plan, I think that Trump has an economical plan that we may not even be aware of, that where it could, the fiat currency could be backed by substantial commodity, as well as Bitcoin digital currency still going forward, and as well as having the gold and silver commodity. So
so you got this fight over the term Great Reset, right? So at the start of Trump's first term, the Great Reset was a concept of currency rebalancing. So you heard in the Trump circles about, as you say, a basket of commodities, whether gold, silver, oil, and Bitcoin, being a kind of a break on, and mineral wealth being a break on the sort of fiat currency hyperinflation nightmare that's going on with America and China. And so the Great Reset was going to be, look, invest in Ethiopia, where they've got all natural resources in the sulfur pits of the volcanoes. And like Ethiopia's economy, when we had the revaluation, this Great Reset of currency, then we'll see, like the place that has the most currency will be Ethiopia, because you can print it based on the minerals that you find in the rocks, in the sulfur acid baths of the volcanoes. And so that was one notion about a global rebalancing of the economy to deal with this inflation and fiat issue, which Bitcoin and natural resources would be a part of. And then the Great Reset was like colonized by Klaus Schwab and by the party of Davos and by the World Economic Forum and so on. And they now mean the Great Reset to be the Chinese social credit system comes out of China and into the West and is imposed on us through our smartphones.
What do you think of that?
So our notion at the New Athens is that we are intending to build a blockchain for the people and to build a smart city. Take all these terms, like the terms are malleable, like this Great Reset notion. The terms are malleable. And so our notion is that, okay, a lot of people mistrust blockchain because it can be used for the Chinese social credit system. A lot of people mistrust guns because they can be used to kill people, but actually it's the people that do the killing. The gun is just a tool there. A lot of people mistrust money because money is a tool for bad men to do bad things. But the money, if the incentives are structured right, then that money can be a tool for people to exchange their wishes and to get to work on one another's projects and so on.
If the incentives are structured right, so
So that's what Bitcoin showed us. So Bitcoin showed us that if you aggregate selfish decisions with democracy, and you aggregate that through a voting democracy, then despite those decisions being selfish, the aggregate result of all those transactions and calculations and votes is the public good. So we were discussing with Russ, like the religions are really nihilistic. They say God is there and has made you a puppet in the universe,
well, and
you're going to die, and you're a sinner, you're going to die, and that's a forever pact of the universe with you, and you don't get to make life better. Like, you just got to take your place as a serf or as a king or whatever, and it preserves the hierarchy of state, and it says, look, we're all sinners and we're condemned to this mortal realm or whatever. That's the view of religion, which I think is fundamentally nihilistic. Then in the 19th century, you had the revolutionary ideologies. So from the French Revolution and the English Revolution, actually, through to the Russian Revolution and so on, you see Chinese. So in the sort of 19th, 20th century, you have the ideology, the strong ideologies, whether fascism or communism. And they say, look, we've got to improve the human. We've got to make people more moral. So we've got to bring their moral compass around, and we've got to push it around with his death, there's blood in the streets, to push the human compass around, to make the man greater than he is, and to make him moral. And then he will do the right thing, because the religion says it's okay to be a sinner because you're condemned to death, because you're immaculate, you're broken. The ideology, the strong ideology, say you've got to bring the human around to make him a better man, to make him a superman, and actually that pushing the moral compass is not how the compass wants to swing free with the magnetism of reality. It's not a machine to be pushed. And so blockchain, as far as we understand it here at the New Athens, is a kind of third way, which is let all the people have their moral compass swinging and making the decisions that make sense for them, but just put public good in the way of where they are where they're pointing anyway. So it's giving that freedom, it's giving that free marketplace, and it's allowing people to interact with one another in a free and fair way. Because on the one hand, the blockchain is a union to preserve everybody's rights in their transactions, that they're going to be free and fair. And on the other hand, it's a regulator to make sure all the other guys aren't going to cheat me. And so my transactions are free and fair. So having that union and regulator in one, based on this democracy, allows everybody to make all these selfish decisions, like I want my transactions to work. And yet in aggregate, globally, without these cartels who get together and become banks to harvest the wealth, on a wealth farming people, then we've arrived for 10 years with the Bitcoin blockchain of this democratic money. You apply democracy to a new field. Whether it's democratic art, you can find beauty. Democratic money, you can find fairness. So that's the positive in as far as we understand it. So where are you on the Great Reset?
It would be interesting to see what happens. I think last year with the economy being shut down, I mean, for the fact that the UK was shut down for so long, it could have and should have completely destroyed our UK economy, But you see, I think the globalists that had a plan for the initial Great Reset, it was set for much sooner, but it couldn't be set. They couldn't. I feel like, with the Economic Forum, Davos, their plan seems to be slightly failing. So I think the only thing that seems to be pushing through is the propaganda and the perspective that it's continuing forth. It's going to continue going forward. We're going to have a Great Reset. But I think that people will be able to be given a choice of what they want to use in the future in terms of their own currency, if they would prefer to live in the city and deal with smart cities and, blockchain and crypto and Bitcoin, or if they would want to, live off the land and have their own commodities and minerals. So I think we're split between two worlds of, figuring whether we're going to go towards the digital aspect or whether we're going to go towards possibly, what do you think about a quantum financial system?
Do you mean, when you say that, do you mean the quantum computer that can do all the Bitcoin calculations simultaneously, so it breaks the Bitcoin blockchain? And
everything in terms of...
So, our notion that we've been looking at in terms of smart cities, in terms of blockchain, in terms of providing people with those incentives to create and to build together rather than to destroy, would be mining in the world, right? You can see competence all over the place, right? Satoshi Nakamoto came up with this self-authoring democratic mechanism for making decisions, right? And aggregating that truth, and so arriving at truth with all the different people calculating the the same ledger and the same maths problems to work out the validity of the same transactions, right? So you're not doing that block the block authoring of the calculations to create the Bitcoin to create the block solution. You're not doing that by hand. Your computer's doing that for you, right? And so the computer is the author of truth in the blockchain right now, like the computer calculations, because okay, you've got this ledger of truth, this way of arriving at a truth claim, which is fair because a lot of people have audited that the proposal and said, okay, well, this makes sense. But what it's got reflected back into computer world, and it's not really emerged into the wider world because it was invented by computer nerds, right? And they're really great at doing that hash function, at making the infrastructure. But then it's okay. Well, where's the truth mechanism? Oh, it's in a computer because I like computer. I get computers. I understand computers.
Where's
I
the
don't
computer
understand.
from?
I don't understand, say, art or farming or whatever, mineral extraction or the creation of new propulsion systems or whatever it happens to be. I understand computer, algorithm, and calculation. So where's the authoring of the block? It's back in the computer. But you can author the block in the world. You can say, well, what is quality in art? Well, if we can find valid quality, we can find valid value, and then we can award the mining of that crypto based on activities outside of the computer. So that's what you had. That's how you break the quantum, because it's humans that create IP, intellectual property, with creativity, right? So whether that's art, whether that's a new invention, whether that's a new business, whether that's a new kind of a discovery, yeah, whether it's in sciences or arts, that's the human quantum. So the computer can get faster, and you get the quantum computer that breaks the algorithm to like do the calculations in order because you can do all of them in parallel, right? But if you mine in the world, if you mine in the activities of all these other people, then then that's the block, that's the human blockchain, because then you've got the creativity, which is what at the moment the computer can't replicate, is the originality of thought.
Okay, maybe we just are not aware of it, because a lot of people, like you said, the computer is your truth, is your author of truth. But for me, I would look into the mechanics and the parts of what's within the computer and who that belongs to, and your hardware or where are your nano chips originated from. Then that would lead to something else, and for me, that would be figuring out who the author of truth really is.
Yes. So, yeah, that's. I mean, I've seen the notions of adrenochrome looking at Radeon from AMD and with the graphics chips, which have been used to do. And Chrome being the Google browser.
Oh, right, the symbology.
There's a whole Q rabbit hole that goes down. Okay, adrenochrome
with symbology. And
then you say, okay, you've got the words inside the big tech entities of AMD making the chips and Google making the search. I understand. Yeah, I'm there. I understand what that is. I've never really got numerology or symbology on the basis of logic. Yeah, people who seem interested in it never seem to have, as far as I've seen, a reasonable explanation for it. In the cold light of day, it's like, oh well, here's 666, or you can make these numbers match up to this other number, and that never seems to like hold up really well. Or these words are composed of, I mean, words are sigils of power, and I get that, but
unless you studied Jewish gematria, or studied the ancient Talmud, or the
So yeah, and the Great Pyramid at Giza is a maquette for the world in a tetrahedron. Yeah,
it's on like a ley line on the geometric Earth.
So that's one topic. I mean, just the stuff about in the news, here's some numbers or here's some letters, and you can mix them up and then find a sort of symbological solution, which makes you feel better. I think I think it's when it makes you feel better. That's when you need to doubt it.
I think, does it though?
Well, that's the problem with the trust the plan, folks. That it's not I am working, I am building. It's like something is going on out there, and I can just sit here.
You see, I think with the whole the Q aspect, and I think Q was initially from my personal opinion, I think it was brought out to help restore a lot of faith in, especially in America, because I think they've lost a lot of faith within their country, its policies, their leaders, and their own initial monotheistic beliefs, So I think there's a spiritual battle going on between polytheism and monotheism,
Really?
So yeah. So I think with Q, I think they help restore a lot of faith back into the people and help bring their monotheistic faith back. And I think they may have realized that. Like as Trump said, I mean, the mainstream media have an awful lot of mind power over the people, and I think people really underestimate subliminals and sigils and symbology and how that affects the subconscious mind.
Yes.
So I think people have taken it for granted, and they don't realize that within that subconscious, then it affects your conscious mind and your superconscious mind, to the point where the mind has a lot of powerful things that one can do. And I think
I mean but we can look at words on all different valencies. So I understand, right? If you break it down, I stand beneath, right? I am subject to. I understand. So something is standing over me and I'm standing under it, which means I'm under its power. If you look at jurisdiction, is the physical area, the geographical area where the word has power, right? Juris is law, and diction is the word. So we can go and look at here and say, actually, some of these terms are quite pernicious, and they give us these cognitive problems, because they make us, when we say we understand, we're saying we give up our power to an illegitimate power that stands over us. Instead, we overstand. You could say, oh well, I'm going to substitute the word overstand for understand. And so I'm going to, whenever you say, do you understand? No, I say, I understand. I take
do you comprehend?
Yes.
Roger.
So I understand what you're saying. That these terms do have kind of sigil power, especially in the way that they're composed and how that codes in thoughts. And we've been talking with Russ.
It depends if one looks at it esoterically or.
Well, we've been talking about it in quite literal terms. That as with 1984 and doublespeak and doublethink, as George Orwell saw in the 1940s, because he'd been inside that Tavistock kind of honeycomb of how to do social engineering. If you change the words, and if you evacuate the meaning from the words, it prevents people from having thoughts, because the thoughts are encoded in words. So if you delete things from the dictionary, it will prevent people from even attempting to think about certain ideas in certain ways. And that's what I can see a lot of now.
Power of the words. That's why mainstream media, they all seem to repeat the same type of phrase and words.
Yes.
Build back better, the new normal,
yes.
And they all
yes.
seem to like echo chamber it, across
yes.
the earth. So yeah, it does have a lot of power. And that's what I think induces fear in a lot of the people with COVID. They just install fear. They have the same phrases. It's becoming.
Yeah, as Philip was saying earlier, you're starting to see a global rollout of media, coordinated not just by nation but transnationally. So you see the WHO making it rain with fiat money from the IMF, based on if your nation accedes to these IMF doctrines, which are WHO public health policies, then you get the oil cash, right? Then you get the dollar. And so the people are asking, well, why are all these governments saying the same thing? Well, it's because they're all getting money from the same source. So they're middle managers to the money power, which is the International Monetary Fund, and through that WHO and through that China and Bill Gates. You can draw it in the American elite. You can draw it back, and as you say, follow the white rabbit. And then you find, that's why they're all saying the same thing. It's because the money's coming from the same place.
Then it goes back, circling back to what is money.
Yes.
The value of money.
The value of human wishes. A maths. A form of mathematics to instantiate human wishes. I think that's a very positive way of saying
money.
So Philip was saying earlier that he's been traveling across Europe and he hears a lot from Russia and from across the world, and that there is this rollout of media media messaging that we're hearing globally. And so maybe you're right. Maybe that is an echo that is resounding and resonating, the echoes in that echo chamber. What's the antidote? Apart from trust the plan, let's put trust the plan aside. What shall we do?
You're the one trusting the plan more than myself.
Really?
Yeah.
Really?
I think with the whole, there's the Q movement. I think the whole trusting the plan was more so to have trust in a divine creator, to have trust in the Lord, to have trust in God. So it goes back to the monotheistic beliefs that I think people have lost and are trying to regain, and that helped them overcome a lot of fear that the mainstream media were trying to just put out to the people with, this pandemic.
Zeus and Mars and all these polytheistic religions.
Polytheism, yeah. So, like I said, it seems to be a battle of polytheism versus monotheism, and with Trump being a Republican, yeah. So, but I don't even think it's about the left or the right or Republican or Democrat. It's literally versus
It's a mercurial market. It's Mercury.
Yeah.
You've got to be mercurial. So if you have a pantheon of different gods, then you don't know where you stand.
So it's kind of like a polytheism versus monotheism of energy that's battling, in its own very unusual ways. But when you see what's going on with Hollywood and the music industry, and a lot of people that used to idol and worship the stars and worship these Hollywood stars, they're starting to awaken from that and realize they're not what we thought they were. And with Weinstein and Epstein, and
maybe I'm there's a certain sense in which I'm not the audience for that, as you're saying, because if you don't follow pop culture, then you're not hypnotized by it in the same way, and you're not really aware perhaps of why it's hypnotizing.
But we were all influenced at some point in our lives. It doesn't matter what generation we come from. We've all been influenced by pop culture, by something.
Well, it's interesting, the export of that around the world, right? It's not just confined.
Willing to jump right at the feet of the film star and get pregnant from them. They're ready to jump. They stand there panicking, and they're ready to fight for it.
For Jennifer Dedonge.
So the way to think about this is
idol worship.
To be an idol worshipper. How do you worship yourself if you're willing to sacrifice yourself for the idol?
So yeah, I mean, when you meet Instagram influencers, right, and they got like X million followers, it's called followers. It is an idol worship. They have their religion. They have set themselves up as an idol, and they have followers, like followers of Moses in the desert. The sojourners of Goshen. Watching the chariots on the Memphian flood, as they strewn like the leaves at Vallombrosa, and the Red Sea's been parted, and they follow Moses through the Red Sea, the sojourners of Goshen, and then they get to the other side. They see that the Egyptians have been clapped by the sea, a deadly deluge. And so they're trusting the plan. Two, they're following their idol, right? And it happens to be Moses.
I'm not too sure about that.
they then have a proliferation of other idols when they're in the desert. Moses goes up the mountain to get the tablets, the iPads, and he's got the stone tablets. And so he abandons. He's the stenographer of the Baphomet, or whatever it appears on the mountain, and he's away, and they start worshipping cows. They start worshipping golden statues of cows. So they had the proliferation of idols, right? When they're sitting there getting manna from heaven, so they're getting the fiat money, and they have their idol, the proliferation of polytheistic idol worship, and then the one idol comes back down with the tablet, and he says like here's the website with the news terms and conditions. Sign up, sign up for God phone, God phone, everyone. 10 rules for life, or perhaps 10 articles of there's 10 anyway. We're going for 10. So you have the proliferation of polytheistic idols. You have the one idol that comes back. So you have the Instagram for influencers with their followers. And the question that I always have is
that is bought by Facebook. That's bought with
the question I always have
WhatsApp.
is, okay, you have your followers. What will they do for you? Will they conquer a city for you? Will they build a nation for you? Will they die for you? Will they give you 20 quid? What will they? What specifically? So you've got these followers. What's your leverage into their life? Like, what's your reach into that person's existence? You might be doing it in a positive way in terms of trying to educate them about political intrigue and about productivity, or how to build something. How we're looking at how to build something for yourself and how to build a new infrastructure that sits separately from the corrupted infrastructure that exists. And maybe that's what we need to do. But okay, you have this, as you say, the walled garden of Facebook buying up Instagram and creating this kind of walled garden, Apple and so on, doing the same. All these big tech entities. How do we make our own? How do we get followers and influence them for the good? Have long reach into their lives, not so they'll have a wank on OnlyFans, not so that they'll conquer a city and maybe kill a load of people, but which they probably can't do anyway, or not so they just give 20 quid to buy some Chinese products through their affiliate marketing.
Yeah.
But for good, that's, I think that the next stage. I think it probably is, right?
Oh. Well, we can never really know one's intention or motive when they're marketing or promoting or having a social media in general. So what they perceive and what they may be doing are maybe two different things. So I think with social media, it's become
Moses, the original social media marketer.
Oh,
tablets. Tablets.
I almost I don't, to be honest, but I can't speak on behalf of on social media as a whole, because everybody seems to be on some sort of different agenda. I'm not really too sure with social media. I've kind of shifted away from Facebook and Instagram and big tech media, because they were just restricting whatever you wanted to post or whatever you felt like posting. And when you knew that they were restricting, it started to become an Orwellian era. So I moved away from that, and we kind of created our own somewhat platform, and
Yes, tell me about this.
It kind of just it spiked from when WhatsApp went down. So I think it was at the start of 2021.
Yes.
There was a huge spike, so a lot of people have shifted from one social media app and using
moved into Telegram.
Channels. There's a lot of other
Signal,
platforms.
Yes.
To be honest, I don't really use Signal too much. I mean, as an investigative journalist, I do deep investigations and dig really deep, which goes back into the whole queue down the rabbit hole. So, you would want to question the CEO of Signal. You'd want to question its affiliates and who.
Moxie Marlinspike. He was on Joe Rogan's podcast, and he and Joe Rogan actually. Joe Rogan's a lovely. He has his persona. His on-camera persona. He's a lovely guy. We don't know who he is. We don't know what he's like. He may be really bitter. He may be very happy. Who knows? Outside, but in that framework of the red box, he's a really lovely guy. And he and Moxie Marlinspike, the Signal guy, seemed to they came to sort of a bit of contretemps. They came to a bit of blows, because obviously the founder of Signal, he seemed to be quite a mischievous character, and he was trying to get Joe to make bets with him and lose, but they spoke about, okay, when you sign up for Signal, a signal gets sent out that your number has signed up for Signal, is now a user. And so all of the people that forgot that they knew you now see, Joe Rogan is on Signal, and people he knew from the 80s and 90s who still have the same phone. He still has the same phone number. Yeah. He said, this is annoying to me, because far from being a secret messaging app, you broadcast my presence on it to everybody who's ever had my number, which some of them have forgotten they know me. They've forgotten that they have me in their phone book. But then they see my name, and then I get loads of inundation of people trying to contact me who I don't even remember anymore. And the guy said, well, how else would you do it? How else would you have a system? So it's centralized, right? It's this Moxie guy's personal concept of how this should work. And he's got a user, this guy, saying, this is annoying to me, right? This is an annoying feature. It's a bug. Like you couldn't
switch it off?
You can't switch it off. He said, oh, no, but we want it to happen. He said, well, I don't want it. I'm a user of yours. I don't want it to happen. So the problem is with this centralized software architecture, as you say, who makes the software architecture? Who makes the hardware that the software runs on? What's the provenance of that? Who's in control? Is it democratic? Is there an open source where if you don't like it, you can build another one and see who likes which? You can fork
Bitcoin.
Bitcoin as much as you want and create Bitcoin 2.1, which you have.
Then it branches out towards the controller of the apps, which would go to Apple and Google.
Yes.
And they're all part of the
because
same.
they can sweep up the smaller players.
Right.
Yeah.
And that's why they started to censor certain apps from 2020, and then
If you look at Alex Jones's app, I mean,
I didn't even know he had an app.
He had two apps. There was Infowars and Infowars Live.
Okay.
And they've both been now disabled, banned from Apple Store and from the Google Play Store. You had to sideload it through an APK file, and even then it doesn't work half the time. You just got to go on the website because they've actively said this guy should not have the ability to get that attention.
But they've been giving him attention for over 15 years or something since he invaded the Bohemian Grove.
But yes.
And then later on, some years, it was only recently, I think he admitted to being invited to the Bohemian Grove. So he never even really broke in, So I think there's a lot of controversy in regards to Alex Jones. And 1 minute, I think at the start, when I used to completely dislike Trump, he was very pro-Trump. And then COVID happened and I started to do my research and I saw what he had done. Like, when Trump defunded the World Health Organization alone, that saved millions of lives across the globe. It saved the UK. And I think people in the UK don't even realize how they've been saved from a vaccine that could have been pushed and made mandatory upon every single human in the UK. And Trump defunding that basically put a block.
Yes. I mean, the three major major funders were the US government, the Chinese government, the Chinese Communist Party. We won't call them the Chinese government. And Bill Gates. They seem to be the three. And so Trump cut off one of those money supplies.
He did quite a few, actually. I think he also defunded ID 2020.
Yeah.
So I'm not too sure if he put a block to Bill Gates's crypto patent based on DNA body activity.
Yes. Oh, yeah. Doing star jumps to get crypto. Yes.
I'm sure there's more to it than.
Yes. No. I mean, of course, it's very much more nefarious. The idea is that, it's back to
gamification.
Yes, gamification of your life. Yes.
Fuck that. Fuck them. It's like it's just something. It's just a PowerPoint.
Oliver Nelkin, everybody, our producer and host here.
All this bullshit is just a PowerPoint someone not just created for some hotel-based industry conference, in order to get some investment or a promotion.
Party of Davos, it's what happens
I grabbed
in
some trendy bullshit from another PowerPoint presentation to present at this international conference, where if I get noticed by the CEO or by my boss one rank up, then I might be able to drink white wine out of a glass instead of out of a plastic cup. Yeah, that's all it is. That's all any of it is. It's all fucking bullshit.
Yeah, it's status
of smoke and mirrors. And I think
status whoring in conference land.
Yeah, like Biden getting 81 alleged million votes. I mean, that's just ridiculous. I mean, everybody by now knows that, Biden didn't win, and the media are just hyping him up, giving him this status, and it's becoming it's almost becoming an insult to some people's intelligence. Like,
well, as one of our guests, frequent guests, Ishmael Malik came on and said on election night was one of our last episodes before we went on for our winter break, because we had to recalculate based on Trump didn't win. On election night, Ish was saying, look, this is the geriatric era for America. Like they're electing what they need, and what they need is senescence. What they need is an old people's home. What they need is dementia. Like, so the zeitgeist in America is the end of empire, like collapse, inward collapse of the economy due to this fake plague and so on. And how is that symbolized in the White House? How's that symbolized with election? Well, it's symbolized with this geriatric, lost his mind, senile character who is then this clown, but raised on high, who can't remember that he shouldn't say that he's a paedophile,
and rarely did anything within 47 years.
Yes, well, apart from prosecuting a whole lot of young black men for minor drug offences with the prisons bill.
Wasn't that the vice president as well, who had so many black people arrested?
So that was Kamala Harris too. But so in the 90s, Joe Biden was a senator. And he was the patron of the crime bill, the Bill Clinton crime bill, which criminalized minor drug offenses amongst black youth in America.
Sons doing.
And so that led to the policy, which then Kamala Harris turned into a career of incarcerating young black men in California for trumped up fake drug offenses. And so, it's a massive segregation. These people are astonishingly racist. That's a massive segregation of, if you look at Russ Rossi, he's a wonderful entrepreneur and impresario and a really lovely man and loves people. And so he created a cannabis dispensary during the lockdown in Canada. So he's now he's now the business face, the entrepreneurial face of something which in the 90s and noughties, Biden and Harris locked men in jail as a pretext to get their energy away from say the Black Panthers and Black Power movement or any kind of liberation movement to increase the consciousness of the Black community in America, and to turn them into slave labor in long-term jail farms.
Complete hypocrisy.
And to then say that this is something that this is a administration under which anybody's lives matter is quite absurd, because if you look at the history of these people, they have personally taken it upon themselves to take that energy with the CIA funding, with funding like importation of heroin and crack cocaine into the United States, to depress the power of youth, especially Black youth, and turn them from self-improvement and self-actualization into like the opium smoking of China under the British Empire. It's like just deleting all that energy and taking all those generations, ruining their families, incarcerating all the fathers, and making sure then there's a degeneration of the culture of that community due to repressive laws and so on. And so, as you said, these people have a track record, and if you just look at the track record, then you can see in whose interest they really act, and it's the global elite, not any
and China
oppressed community, and China,
even from their press secretary, the Circleback press secretary.
Yes,
I think she's got some.
Oh, Gwen Stacy, or
But Jen Psaki, Circleback Psaki.
She's among the paid for agents of China.
The CCP,
yeah. I mean, if interestingly, Trump had an investigation into the IP export of American intellectual property to China, and arrested was the head of the Harvard biochemistry department, who was under investigation for selling biochem, essentially weaponized biological
weaponized mice.
Weaponized humanized mice to China. Humanized mice. You saw it. You saw it here first. It's coming across the floor towards a plague near you.
Enough fear already. I think that's the last thing we need to do.
Yeah, what you want to do? You want to get a drone to drop like mouse feed on your target area, and then just release weaponized humanized mice, and they'll just like sniff out the food, rather than drones with hand grenades.
The keystone.
Yes. So no, I'm going to come back later. No, he's got keys. No, I need my keys to get back in. Anyway,
join the keystone.
And see. So blah blah blah. Where were we? Human blockchain and harnessing human energy, not by Bill Gates making you do star jumps or regulating your blood in order to gain crypto, but essentially trading your freedom in order to get some small token that will allow you to trade the mark in the hand or the mark in the forehead.
The mark in the hand.
So we've got this patent of human blockchain from Gates, which is this poisoned version, and I think that's poisoning the concept of blockchain as we've said, the potential for this human renaissance.
Yeah.
Yeah, so they're taking over some of the terms now, and they're saying, "Oh, well, smart city means Chinese social credit system," and that scares people off.
But is this something you would want? Is it something you would feel like you want? The social credit system. I mean,
no, the opposite. Quite the opposite.
We go from one fiat currency that's valued and backed by nothing to another digital currency that may possibly be also backed by nothing. I mean, it's kind of just like a shift from analog to digital. But this is where I go back to trusting the plan, and or to be honest, creating, being able to manifest a future and somewhat of a plan that we would want. So I think a lot of the people underestimate their power and their ability. I mean, with everything going on with the lockdown, people were not complying to that. I think after about 8 NHS claps a week, I think they kind of like realized they're being played for.
Yeah.
So things is going with the economy and Bitcoin and blockchain. I think there will be options. It won't be the only option. So I don't think it's just going to shift straight away. I think that President Trump has put in a lot of executive orders, and he's done a lot of things behind the scenes in terms of financially, with the dollar, with gold, with digital currency, with the Federal Reserve, with the IRS to deal with America, and especially with lowering taxes, and with the US Treasury. So
where are you on UAPs?
No comment.
No comment, because the report's going to drop this month, next month. They had 18 months, right? Trump did this, so this is his like one of his legacy trolls. Like he said to all the security services, like produce a report on produce a report on what you know about UFOs, which now they've called UAPs.
Right.
So there's another language game where what is a UAP? Well, it used to be called a UFO. Everyone knew what a UFO was, but they've turned unidentified flying object into unidentified aerial phenomenon, UAP.
Right.
And so now all the security services had 18 months after Trump's first term, he passed it just right at the end of his first term, to make a report on what America knows about UAPs. Is it Russia? Is it China? And Russia and China have said at various points in history, no, it's not us. Like, we don't have like next gen tech. We don't have breakthrough technology of post gravity, anti-gravity mechanism, or a kind of ion drive engine or whatever. We don't have that tech. That they've looked through the skunk works. They've looked through Area 51 and Roswell, and is there any American institution that has this tech? Well, none of us. So Russia and Yeltsin period, they had a détente where the America and Russia were sharing a lot of data, and so they looked through all of the Russian facilities before Yeltsin sold them off to the oligarchs, and they said, okay, well the UAPs aren't coming from here. There's no base with where the sources are going, right, in Russia, because they got control of Russia in that 1991 kind of chaos period when the Soviets fell, and then China don't have it because the US has given them all the patents. And through this back door of the Chinese exchange of information,
treasonous
and the
US treasonous information at that too,
and the Americans, they say, well, none of us have it. So if none of us, any of the three of us have it, then okay, so what's this report going to drop in the next few days? Well, that's intriguing, right?
Well, I think at the start of Trump's presidency, he spent some $50 billion on Space Force, something ridiculous. I remember it because I wasn't really a fan of Trump, so I was like, what is this man doing? We've got enough problems on planet Earth. You're focusing on space. But I think as time went on, especially during COVID and this year, it started to make a lot more sense as to why. And I think this is where it goes back to the plan. I think it goes back to the plan. So I think there's a lot that he knew that we may not know. and the media will not know or say. So, I mean, when he spent billions on Space Force, I think it's, I think it will eventually, I think it will be revealed a lot more about Space Force and how it can be connected on such a vast scale that's never been seen before, as opposed to like, NASA, which basically we know that Germany didn't win the war. They just moved to NASA. They moved to America and just created NASA and the CIA. So, I think the
Werner von Braun and the Operation Paperclip.
And there was exactly Operation Paperclip. So I do also personally, I think there's a difference between a extraterrestrial and extra dimensional being, and the UFOs, if there was one, then they're government, they're made in their government bases. And I think I'm not saying that Trump did, but he possibly knew about that. Hence,
so so during the start of, I mean, it's so hard to go back, to remember, because there's so much is piled upon us, and there's an overstimulation of information, which means that our memories aren't, unless we write things down and then go over our records, we don't necessarily remember everything. So at the start, the Great Reset was a currency. It was like rebalancing of currencies, we were saying, with minerals.
Davos, they were saying you'd have nothing and everybody would be happy. Wasn't that the phrase?
Yeah.
The main phrase?
Yes.
You'll own nothing and you'll be happy.
That's
yes.
the one.
So it was taken over. So that Great Reset was a pro-Trump term about currency rebalancing, and then it became hijacked by the Davos party of Davos, and then they made it mean the Chinese social credit system. In the same way, we had this idea of the D class. So this is one of the early concepts of the Q movement, that the Trust the Plan was based on, Trump has has access to all of these files, right? He's seen all the classified information about the Kennedy, who really killed Kennedy, about whether they really got to the moon, about whether they've had dealings with alien
child trafficking
governments, where the child trafficking is really going, and so the D class was this notion that, well, Trump's real activity is in the White House is in preparing the reports to disclose this classified information and open it up to democracy, and saying, look, the people should decide their own view about this secreted information in the elite governing class. Yeah. Whether it means that we secretly have cancer curing technology when we're keeping it back, why it was that we had patents for smartphones in the 1950s and then we only received why is we only received smartphones as a product in 2007. And so so they decided, Trump is this guy who's going to come in and break open the IP blockade of, like, we get drip fed out medicine, we get drip fed out tech as consumer products long after it's actually been developed and patented. If only you look at what's happening in the patent office. And then what's the other side of that coin? The D class has kind of left us, and the last element is next week is this UAP paper that's good, that he's made all of its intelligence services.
See, I don't know if he made, I don't know if he prepared or made them per se. I don't even think he had to. In a way, I think he just had access to be able to, release them to the public. So when I think Trump said in one of his speeches, I'm giving power back to you, the people.
Yes.
I think this is when he was inaugurated.
Yes.
When he was inaugurated. And when he said that, I think what he meant was, I'm giving you the power of knowledge, and I'm giving you the truth that's been suppressed and hidden from you via this surface web of lies that isn't even the deep or the dark. So and I think through that, a lot of people have become more awoken, and they've started to question things more and get out of the whole mockingbird mind control from the mainstream media that's been programmed upon society for decades. So that's why they've always blamed Russia for everything. It's always been in the Hollywood movies, and they've always had the same kind of concept, ideology, and so I think that's, I mean, there's truth to every lie, there's lie to every truth, and it's like art imitating life, imitating art, but in real life it was far worse than what we're being told how it was. So he has released a lot, and he's given a lot of, I don't know if it was Trump, it could be people within his circles, but I think he's done such a superb job, and I really underestimated Trump, to be honest. And was completely, misguided and, by the mainstream media. So a lot will start to be revealed as time goes on. But I think at the moment, people needed to be shown what it was like without Trump so that they can actually form, I think it's only through pain you change, so we can form as human conscience, as society, to have a bit more gratitude for what we have. They say that we don't really appreciate what we have until we've lost it. So,
well, I certainly think we have lost a great deal in the past year and a half in terms of our energy, in terms of our will, and in terms of our independence and autonomy. And that's been allowed by a lot of people. And now it's a matter of clawing that back and maybe showing a more energetic path, something that is active in the world rather than passive, something that is producing rather than receiving. And that's what we're really working on at the New Athens, what I hope we can work together on in the coming weeks and months. Now we've got together to amplify a message of productivity and cooperation and collaboration, rather than this atomic notion of people like sealed in their little boxes and not able to really come together. And so I think that's something that you, Sunny, are interested in, and something that we are here too. And I hope we can move that forward. Well, thank you for coming down and being part of this first Pandemia episode of the New Athens podcast. Thank you for coming. Please share widely, and we'll be making a clip show later in this week. So we'll be back next week with a Friday Night Lights, I think, back to our usual Friday slot. And please follow us on all the social media channels that we will be listing below. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you, Jaf Sade. Thank you to Oliver Nelkin, our producer here. Thank you to Philip Pearsall, our artist and commentator, from the wonderful art. And that's it from me. Thank you very much. Have a good night. Have a good afternoon. Have a good weekend.
Oh God, I almost knocked that over. Sorry, I feel so rude.